So the material comes pretty easy to me. So I've been exposed to it all. So I should be able to talk to it and speak to it, and hopefully answer your questions if you have any. Just a little bit about me. I've been at 3rd Rated Battalion for about 2 years now, and up for orders in about a year. I mean, PCS in a year. I'm up for orders right now. So hoping they're favorable. But anyways, so we're gonna kick off the training. Got a lot of chapters to cover in the next hour and a half. Try not to move too slow. I just set my little timer here, so matter of fact I just started. But I try to move through it. I get in the habit of trying to teach sometimes instead of just kind of reviewing information. So you guys got a lot to read. Anybody get a chance to read over this material before you came here today? Have you seen it, familiarize yourself with it? All right. Alright, so afterwards, definitely get into it. You guys got a good setup here. You guys got the quizzes, understanding the middle. The quizzes and the actual instructions, the reference materials, and all that stuff available to you. So definitely take a look at it afterwards. PowerPoints are right in line with the instruction. I got a chance to glance at it, so we'll get through it. All right, so we'll shove off. All right, so this is the Marine Corps instruction. We're gonna go over health service support. So I told myself on the way here on the drive that I give like a brief overview. So you guys, most people, you know what? Yeah, most of you guys are in Marine Corps camis. If you guys aren't haven't been to field men and all that good stuff, this is really focused on the MAGTAP. It's focused on the MAGTAP. It's focused on, we'll talk about MEF. Some MLFAT sets of resources. We'll talk about MLG and MAW, but it's Marine Corps based. So if you're not familiar with some of the verbiage, just let me know. We'll talk through it. All right, next slide. So immediate chapter 2, we start off with talking about intelligence. Intelligence in general is required, for the commanding officer to make it to kind of help shape his decisions. So we got to have intelligence. We got to have information. So the intelligence is, I'm gonna go through the PowerPoint so I'll make sure I don't miss anything. So the intelligence is mission focused, of course. It's intel, so it should be mission focused in order for us to be successful. I'm already going right to the slide. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over the PowerPoint, and then if it's missing anything, I feel like there's some supplemental information that we should have. I'll make sure I include it. That's why I got this instruction in my hand. The MAGTAF. So we're talking about Marine Air Ground Task Force. The information, intel operations are determined by the commander's critical information requirements. So the CO's information requirements should drive intel operations. That's all that's saying, and that makes sense. Medical intel, it includes more than just like disease and information like that. It's a little bit more than that. And the reason that's stated here is stated in the instructions because we have our resource to get medical intel, which we'll cover here. But I mean, there are other resources that med officers and med planners can tap into. So it's more than just disease and operational and psychological environment hazards. It's a little bit more than that. There's a lot of raw data that we can tap into as medical professionals. And it says there, from all sources, internal and external, it must be used to form a complete picture. So we should use all. So that's straight to the point. We should use all internal assets, resources, plus external to form a complete picture for the commanding officer. All right, so I'm going to make sure there's nothing else on medical intelligence because that pretty much covers med intel. The biggest takeaway is, of course, that information intelligence is needed to support decision making. And on the medical side, we have a requirement. And man, I thought I was going to get into I think we'll cover that a little later. That's any question on medical intel? Medical intelligence. All right. I'm gonna say this, but it's I think we're gonna cover it later. But of course, you got your battalion surgeons, you got your right in front of you. Environmental health officers, PMTs, and and all those folks are covering that intel, and of course corpsmen as well that who are responsible for gathering that information, the medical intelligence information for the commanding officer. But we also have our S2 shops, our intel shops, who for the most part, not only do they have responsibility, but even within MARSOC, they're the ones with the access to the resources. So some of those platforms and programs we don't even have access to, so we got to go to the S shop, and of course put in that information requirement so that they can pull that information for us to build a picture for the CEO. So, all right, PrevMed. All right, and of course, let's go in the instruction. One of the first things he points out is that most preventive medicine assets are organic to the battalion, organic to the MACTAB. So, and it says they're found in H&S company. You guys make sure you look over this, because all these could be potential questions. But PrevMed assets are found all throughout the MACTAB. They're found in H&S company. They're found in Med Battalion, Combat Logistics Battalion. Most of our infantry battalions have a PrevMed tech. Same thing over in MARSOC. All of our Raider battalions have a PMT. So they're organic to the units. Organic to the MEF, even organic to MARSOC, is our preventive medicine. And it says here MLG, so across the MACTAB. The MAR, the MLG, the MEF, they all have PrevMed assets. Can you guys read the slide from where you are? All right, because I don't want to read it verbatim. Preventive medicine, their job is to provide for self-protection. So that's a primary responsibility. So we talk about risk assessments. I don't want to say IMR, but it's even talking about some of the occupational requirements. It falls in the realm of preventive medicine. Environmental health surveys. They just do their force self-protection piece. So they're surveying the base, they're surveying the water. They make sure we have access to water, make sure that we're disposing things the right way when it comes to both food as well as biohazardous waste. So they're protecting the forest. Oh my goodness. So when they do the health risk assessments, which is a part of the PrevMed function, that determines what medications we take for malaria prevention, rabies, the rabies risk in that country. Environment, so it determines which vaccines we take prior to deploying, and then also how we're acquiring water and food and everything else downrange. Kind of covered. All right, next slide. Let's see if there's anything else there. All right, local command intelligence. So it just says additional medical intel can be requested through these intel sections. So the combat element, GCE. I know I covered this earlier, the ACE, well actually we're talking about PrevMed, but medical logistics company, they all provide us medical intelligence. Most of these, the command element, the GCE, the ACE, and the MOG all have medical planners. So they have officers, healthcare administrators, what have you. Primary officers, their primary responsibility is med intel, med planning. And then all those, the GCE, the CE, the ACE, and MLG all have environmental health officers, or PrevMed officers as well. So those are where that resource is. Okay, yeah. And in this instruction, you can find more information about that. See? All right, everything's important. So everything you guys read, everything you guys have on the slide is important as far as exam purposes. But it's the health service support element that falls within the MOG is normally the first people to receive medical intel. If you got a proactive TMT, EHO at the battalion level, those guys they'll probably get it first, but they should be the first. So, all right, next. I'm not going to go. I'm sorry, I'm going too much. All right. So, National Center for Medical Intelligence, these folks primarily support Department of Defense operations. They actually came down to MARSOC probably about 4 months ago to give us a med intel class. So their primary responsibility is to provide medical intelligence to the DoD. Yep. So producers, they provide all source intel. So they're looking everywhere. The World Health Organization, they're looking down at the city, the county level, state level, country level. Yep, go ahead. And in providing us medical intelligence, they also provide like environmental surveys. They can tell us these people have a lot of research, tell you which way the wind's blowing, historically where we should place a fob. So when it comes to mission planning, we reach out to this organization to determine where we're going to locate. When we talk about sea burning risk, we're talking about like fallout from radiation, from radiological warfare and all that stuff. We pull reports from these guys. When it comes to water source, which way the water flows, it gets into all kinds of services. Next. All right. Like I just said, they just came down to Marstock, so they do in-house as well as mobile training. A lot of stuff that they access is top secret. That's why we have to go to the S2 to get some of our intel reports. So your S2 reps, your intel reps, actually have access. They should have access to the system, that the National Center for Medical Intelligence uses. Hey, we talked about they provide direct support for planning. I mean, so when they say direct support, this organization, like, so your battalions, your PMTs can reach out to this organization directly. Like a lot of recon former deploy independently, so a lot of our teams go places where they're just by themselves, and the SARC or the actual service IDC, 84 quarters with those guys can reach out to this organization directly, and they'll provide a report like within 24 hours. So when you're doing mission planning and the CO has a question or information requirement, you can reach out to these guys directly. So they provide direct support as well as, and I think it says here, so yeah, so adhere to that. They do provide direct support. It should go through your HSS. So, but you can reach out to them directly. We don't go through HSS, but we have a medical planner at Marstock who we should go through our medical planner to get information, to get reports from this organization, but they provide direct support, so you don't have to do that. But it should. Make sure your HSS command know that you're reaching out to another government organization. Next slide. Right. So now we're going to operations. And there's a lot of information. I think they do this because they just, like I feel a certain way when it comes to exam preparation, man. That's why I got this in front of me. I don't want to skip anything for you guys because your career's on the line. So the PowerPoints are doing the same thing here. I noticed like these next couple of PowerPoints are going to be pretty robust as far as information. We'll try to make sure I don't miss anything. So it's saying that Marine Corps Force Commanders are responsible for coordinating HSS, Health Service Support. It is the CO's responsibility. And then what we're going to get into is that's delegated now to the surgeons. And rightfully so, they expect the doctors, the environmental health officers, those guys to coordinate HSS. So when they push out their task, we should be able to look at the mission and provide HSS coordination for mission success. So, Mark 4 surgeons, dental officers, med planners, EHO, all these guys, those are the ones that are going to be providing the medical intelligence. I know I'm still talking about medical intelligence. To coordinate HSS, health service support. And health service support is, of course, the service that we put in place to sustain the force. So we're talking about supplies. We're talking about assets as far as surgical assets, whatever we need for mission planning, as well as the force self-protection piece, the PMT piece. That's going to be very important in planning. All right. So the matters relate to this stuff. Medical logistics, I know I just kind of said that. Patient movement, so as far as your plan for patient movement, your CASVAC plan, medevac plan, those folks are responsible for that. Environmental health surveys, sanitation, safety, disease surveillance prior to the medical intelligence. It's kind of restating the same thing, but just know that the surgeon, dental officers, everybody has a role and responsibility. Next slide. All right, so Marine Expeditionary Forces. Of course, it's operational. It's the MEP. So it's primarily the okay, I'm back up. It's the MEP. I'll leave it at that. But of course, it's Marine Expeditionary Unit, so we deal with war operational level. CO bears the same responsibilities as the HSS staff. So one thing I want to pull from this is that the MEP, so we talk about the MEP, it's not necessarily tactical. I mean, you got battalions that are responsible for the tactical planning, those subordinate units, but so the MEP is doing the operational planning as far as the operational area. So the CO bears the same, so at every level the CO has the same responsibility. So it's probably going to be repetitive because it's going to go over MLG and MAR and all that stuff. At every level, the CO and the surgeons have the same responsibility. So I caveat with that. So it's saying that so we have organic capabilities, but so those outside of the GC element, you have to reach out to MLG. So we have the ACE, the aviation portion, you got the ground portion. For those requirements that are outside of those, what they can provide, we should be reaching out to Marine Logistics Group to get those assets, those resources. And so this talking about this requirement. I think it's talking more about personnel requirements. So if we have requirements outside of what we can provide at the MEF level, then we normally use the augmentee program. We start requesting IAs. They pull from the hospitals, and then if the hospital doesn't have the staff, then we start. But it says here we start pulling from the neighbor reserves. So the ground elements, use what they got. What we don't have, we request it. It normally comes from the MTFs, and then what the MTFs don't have, we pull from the reserves. That's all I'm saying. Support. And so additional support may be needed for designated casualty receiving. That's when we use CRTSs on some of our ships in the Comfort EMF. All right. Next slide. MARDIV, same responsibilities. Med planner. The surgeon, those guys have the same responsibilities. This lays out the officers they have. The staff up there have a psychologist. They have it doesn't say here, but medical plans. They have a medical planner, a surgeon. But EHO, I think all component levels have an environmental health officer, and of course we got coroner. Similar responsibilities, as I stated. We're talking about Marine Division now. But under the MEF, division, MLG, the officers and the surgeons have same responsibilities. Planning responsibilities. All right, which is true. So when you get down to the division level, or anything smaller than the division, even at the regimental level, the regimental surgeon and the battalion surgeons, they're going to absorb all the responsibility. There is no environmental health officer. So they're responsible for the planning part, the coordinating HSS and medical intel. And what they don't know, they should be reaching out. So same like when we deploy as teams, we're solely responsible. The guys are solely responsible. It's their responsibility to tap into the resources. All right. Next slide. All right, the Marine aircraft wing, same thing. Same responsibilities. Each group has a flight surgeon and several foremen. And next slide. MLG gets a little different than MLG, but still the surgeon has the same responsibility. The MLG, the MLG has a Marine colonel, but the surgeon has the same responsibilities as far as advising the CO on HSS coordination and intel. MLG HSS plans and coordinate HSS with, okay, so the health service support officer, so at MLG you got something different. Now you got an health service support officer. So because MLG, they're there to provide support to us. They have a health service support officer. And MEF and everywhere else, you're not going to have that. We have medical planners, but not a HSSO, which the HSSO is a medical planner. It's just that they're higher rank and that's their primary responsibility. But it's to help coordinate HSS for the GCE element as well as the ACE. All right, and so they're there. I'm talking to you guys. I wish I was talking to chiefs. It's like it's our responsibility to reach out. So the battalion surgeons have to reach out to these guys, but they are there. They're responsible for providing that support. All right, the HSO serves as OIC. Doing exercise and operations for the medical section. So that person is responsible for running medical as far as the MLG. Medical logistics groups is concerned, the HSO is the OIC. Alright, MLG has a majority of mass. Yeah. That's true. Alright, so MLG is where all the surgeons are. That's why shock trauma platoon is. They got the majority of our medical support, medical services. For the MEF, for the Marine Expeditionary Force. Next slide. Alright, dental battalion. Man, they provide, they provide the dental services. It's part of MLG. So when you see this, when you look at these PowerPoints, they're trying to keep it organized. So we were talking about the MEF originally, and then from the MEF we talked about MARDIV, and we talked about the MAR, and now we're talking about MLG. And now we're talking about dental battalion within MLG. So dental battalion, they provide the dental services for the MEF. All right. That's 20 minutes. I got 10 minutes. All right. So when it comes to planning, they can provide tasks for 9 sections to support whatever the HSS requirement is. Right. So they maintain dental readiness doing exercises, deployments. All right, so it's what this last bullet is saying. In an operational environment, their dental responsibility is emergency services. So normally they deploy the dental. You got a dental officer, and I've seen the dental technician. You rarely ever see a dental hygienist because they're not there to do cleanings. They're there just to provide emergency fractures, emergency fillings, and stuff like that. But in an operational environment, they normally, they just provide emergency services. Dental provides emergency services in an operational environment. Next slide. Medical logistics is exactly that. Provide medical logistics falls under MLG. They provide Class 8, so if you see Class 8 anywhere, that's medical supplies and equipment. That's their responsibility. Centralized acquisition, storage, and stock. Most of you guys know this, right? So anyways, that's what MLG does. That's where all the supplies are. One thing it says here, they do construct the medical supply sets, the AMARs and ADARs. So the medical supply sets that the battalions are requesting during training and deployment, medical logistics, MLG provides that, MedLaw company, medical logistics company. And they resupply HSS with AMARs and ADARs. They also have not our narcotics. Marshall have our own narcotics, but we request our CBO units through MedLaw company. So it's a centralized acquisition, storage, and stock. Next slide. Medical battalion is different from medical logistics company. They provide so medical battalion is going to do all the medical stuff. Medical logistics just does logistics. Med battalion does the medical portion. Organize HSS to support MAGTAP missions. So medical battalion we still fall in the medical logistics group. As well as we talked about dental battalion. Now we're talking about medical battalion and medical logistics company. But med battalion. They provide HSS functions for the MAGTAP. They only provide the resuscitative surgery. The resuscitative HSS. So they provide the shock trauma platoon for emergency care. They also provide the FRSSs for surgery. And one thing that's stated here, for Med Battalion, just keep that in mind, from a manpower standpoint, they provide a surplus for foreman in case. So if we need some foreman for the division, need more foreman. We can take some combat injuries or what have you. Those foremen are probably going to come from Med Battalion. They also have their responsibilities. All right, each surgical company. So now we're kind of breaking down Med Battalion. You got surgical companies. Each surgical company contains a surgical platoon. I'm trying to get together. Surgical platoon with the FRSS and shock trauma platoon. And the ward, I'm reading this verbatim, and the ward for temporary holding for casualties. I think they do a little bit of en route care. So they got a few ambulances that should be able to transport casualties. If I'm not mistaken, they transport casualties from the FRSS to like onto the high echelon of care. They don't really run forward a lot. They're not gonna run forward to try and grab somebody, but once they receive casualties, they have an en route care element that treats the casualty, make sure they stay to the next echelon. So anyways, just to kind of recap, Med Battalion has they support the medical as far as HSS specifically resuscitative care. Each surgical company has a FRSS, a surgical portion as well as shock trauma center. And we haven't really talked about the roles of care, but they provide role 2 care. So it's like damage control surgery. They provide that. And like I said, every subordinate command. So we're talking about the MACTF, the MEF, the MAR, the MLG, we all have DMTs. So the last bullet just says they have a prayer med section. Next slide. All right, so we're gonna talk about H&S company. So MLG, H&S company, then you have you got all these sections. Normally every battalion you have S1, S2. You got all these subsections that sub-functions of the battalion. Headquarters service companies have the same sub-functions. So I'm just throwing that out there. And the section always consists of a surgeon and 2 surgical platoons. So you just make sure you guys know that for test purposes. And yeah, that's stuff there. Alright, next slide. Take a look at this when you get a chance. It's an instruction. It's got like the organizational chart for the unit as well as the headquarters section. Talking about this same thing we saw on the previous slide. It's talking about the number of personnel and who's within the surgical company. Next slide. All right, shock trauma platoon. It's like an ER. It can serve as a battalion evacuation station. In Iraq in 04, we had a shock trauma platoon that was co-located with us, taking all the casualties. I hated it, but they can do that. So take a look at, but shock trauma platoons like the ER, surgical company supports regimental size operations, received casualties, and you got that provides. So surgical company provides like role 1 care, just like so. It supports the regimental size operation, but it's like a BAS. They're just providing a role 1 care, the surgeon, med tech, foreman. And then you have the FRSS, which is a role 2 damage control surgery. So surgical system, it provides surgery. Surgical company is more like an aid station for regimental size operations. And then the shock trauma platoon is like ER that can most likely, oftentimes they co-locate with the battalion, but every now and then you'll see a shock trauma platoon and a FRSS together. So you got ER, OR in that sense. So casualties come through and they're treated.
I just point something out, Chief. That bottom bullet, you know that. I've seen that before.
All right. Hope you guys heard that. So yeah, so that bottom bullet, we've seen that on the exam before. So it's how the FRSS system is comprised. Yeah, so 2 surgeons, 1 anesthesiologist. I know people listening. 1 IDC, 1 84-4. Yeah, and 2 OR techs. Next slide. All right, MU. So you got Marine Expeditionary Unit. They go forward. They're responsible for having their own HSS, organic HSS capability. So you got a MU surgeon. You got a paramedic tech. You got a planner. You're gonna have all these people. So they provide their own organic HSS. It says specifically that the Health Service Support Detachment is what's on the MU. It primarily falls under the Combat Logistics Battalion. Yep. And this is the structure of the Health Service Support Detachment. We're talking about a MU now. So we moved on from the MEF and MLG, just the unit organic structure to more operational stuff. So, all right. So that's what that construct looks like. The medical specific staff includes the shock trauma platoon, headquarters service company, med log detachment, and dental detachment for the MU. Yeah, and it says it's tactical situation dictates the size of the HSD. So when they do mission planning and then they know where they're going, they determine the size of the force. So it could change. but that's the primary construct. Next slide. So know that, I mean, easy exam questions come from that. All right, man, so we get more into the view operations. So the commander and previous task force, they have a surgeon, so, and that surgeon is overall responsible for the HSS. So, you see the same thing. So as we go lower to the tactical, close to the tactical level, right now we still have a surgeon, got a new surgeon, you have the amphibious task force, they have a surgeon. Surgeons responsible for HSS. So if you see that, the surgeons are responsible for HSS. Yeah. All right, next slide. You can take a look at this diagram, but it's all saying the same thing. Okay, so some capabilities external to the MAGTAF. We're talking about casualty receiving ships. Of course, there's no mission planning, but if we know there's a, we suspect a lot of casualties, and we start planning for a lot of casualties. So external to the MAGTAF, we can actually request the comfort, come and stage offshore. You got the casualty receiving ships, some of the amphibs. I think it talks about it, yeah. So we get some of the amphibs. So this is the capabilities of the CRTSs, and then of course we use LHDs and LHAs that are suitable for receiving casualties. All right. Expeditionary medical facility, the comfort. You guys also know that EMF, the hospital. Primarily the same people can go on the ground and put in the theater hospital. Alright. And after what it says here, receive patients mainly by helicopter and a limited surface craft. And they're trying to do something about that helicopter platform with like one at a time. But primarily by helo. Alright, augmentation. Okay, so it's talking about, so when they request augmentations, as far as fleet surgical team and HSS, they're assigned to the combat commanders. So if it's Africa, they're going to be assigned to AFRICOM, they're going to be assigned to EURCOM or SOUTHCOM, what have you. ASAP, that's essentially our program in medical. Yeah, that's self-explanatory. So we request personnel, additional personnel through the ASAP program. They come from MTS, they come from the hospital. So Naval Hospital, Portsmouth, Naval Hospital, Jackson, all those guys provide ASAP. Next slide. All right. All right, I'm trying to move quickly through this. So we're talking about health service support, we're talking about logistics. So we're talking about Class A resupply, and they manage and resupply our Class A supplies. Again, we talked about MLG, they provide our AMOLs, ADOLs. And so what we have here is it talks about the time frame in which an AMOL and ADOL is supposed to last. For the MEF, 60 days, they should have 60 days worth of supplies. And you guys see this. The MEF, Maritime Repositioning Force, 30 days, U 15-day supply. MARSOC, we deploy with the AMOL as well. It's a different number, but it's 30-day supply. So, next slide. Just make sure, it's an easy question. We come from that. Make sure you guys know that. All right, so those AMOL, ADOLs are authorized medical allowance list. That's what we're authorized to have. I know when aboard ships, they get a little bit more strict about, the amount of supplies they have. For us, most times we go over, but it has more of a logistical requirement as well. But it's authorized. We're talking about general allowance right now with ADOLs, AMOLs. Forward operation more than 60 days, medical supplies. So the AMOLs and ADOLs is designed for us to go out only a certain amount of time. If we're going to be out further than that, we tap into the theater assets. So you got the TLAM and the SIMLAM, but these you can tap into when you get into theater, and we should tap into. So the Army has been tasked by the DoD. So the TLAM, the theater logistics system, the Army has the primary responsibility. So but they request IAs as well, so it might be Navy guys working in the TLAM, but it's just saying that the Army has been tasked to support DoD with the TLAMs and the SLAMs. All right. Next slide. Yep, formally giving us salt back, so routine resupply. Alright, so it's, I'm just trying to read this guy, I know I'm reading it. So anyways, it's saying that for combat resupply, they should go through the SLAM. Once their supplies are exceeded, routine supplies should go through, like if it's a battalion or something, should go through their battalion process. So it's talking about utilize the unit supply section for routine supplies. For combat supplies, you normally go through the theater for the theater asset for resupply. All right, next slide. Yeah, so the AMOR, they are modular. And okay, so you guys know this ratio. Gives you the ratio of the AMOR. Alright, one equipment per 2 sets of consumables. 1.5 ratio. That again, go ahead. Alright. Alright, that was me. You guys want to keep pushing? Alright. So know that, man, you know, a lot of questions can come from that bid. Some of you guys might see it from that, but familiarize yourself with it. Just keep in mind, just primarily talking about the mag tab. We did go down MEF, MAR. We didn't talk about MAR that much, but the common theme you guys saw is that regardless of the unit size, you had the, you know, it's the CO responsibility, but the surgeons were responsible for coordinating HSS and advising the CO. Even in Intel, medical was still responsible for Intel. And when you got some more of the organizational stuff like the MEF and MLG, those guys had med planners and environmental health officers. You'll probably only see those at that component level, like MEF, MAR. The MAR itself has an EHO and a surgeon. The MEF has an EHO and a surgeon, and MLG has the same thing. Yeah.
Can you update the link for PowerPoint for this?
It's saying you need to request access.
A lot of me to open it. But I'm in the classroom.
Yeah, give you a full access. That's why it's hard for us to QA on our own stuff, because
So if I'm logged in,
We shouldn't
sit in the class, let me open it.
We shouldn't need to do that though, but it's saying the same thing for me.
I have full access now, because I'm in the city. But the creator.
My bad, Your Highness. Your Majesty.
I've been over this book so many times, it's scary.
Very good. I think I was not already conveniently placed in front of this. 55 inches. It looks like I'm there.
just refresh your entire browser. Or at least, not the browser, but the website. Just jump that to the barn.
Doesn't work, G. Doesn't work.
Does it work?
Nope.
What?
No, it worked.
Just want you wanna do like a web development class?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go right to chapter 4.
All right.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's fine when I have community college.
Huh?
It's fine when I have community college and I'll have math pay for you.
Drive me.
Would you wanna go?
I'm gonna go chapter 4.
There it is. Oh,
Don't forget about it. About
They'll pull it up.
All right.
Or it'd be good. You did something, because we were on this one yesterday.
I went in and
It's
tried.
muted. It's not
Oh,
recording.
yeah.
See, you planned it perfectly.
Well, it just says.
So they're all individualized chapters in there now.
If you need, but then you
I
delete
gotta
the
go
last
one
one.
of those.
Yeah.
Died.
You did a good job, but you fucked everything.
So they're kind of barn now.
Door smash.
All right. We're good.
So you just did.
I'm gonna go ahead and shove off. All right. So we're gonna talk about air medical evacuation. Air medical evacuation is normally evacs from. It's normally from continent to continent. So once we get into AE, aero medical evacuation is when they're leaving like Africa to Spain, from Afghanistan to Germany. It's gonna be that long trip. Go back to the next slide. Go back to that. So in the previous slide, we're talking about terms. So first you saw CASEVAC. CASEVAC is normally a non-medical platform. It's like a vehicle, you know, from the point of injury to like damage control surgery. And that's for a CASEVAC. It's a non-medical platform for one. So even if you had a corpsman on board, it's probably it's an unmarked, you know, undesignated platform. So it's not an ambulance. One thing I want to talk about here, but you may hear TACEVAC somewhere. TACEVAC is just a tactical evacuation. I mean, you may have a Red Cross, and you have a Red Cross on that, but it's just a tactical scenario. But CASEVAC primarily is non-medical personnel on board, so we got those considerations, as well as it's an undesignated aircraft, so it could be shot at and all that good stuff. Then you had a medevac. Medevac is designated, so it's a normally you can have a corpsman on board, a 6-day whiskey or something. Whether that's an ambulance or a UH-60 or something, it's a designated medevac with medical personnel on board to treat the casualty en route. It's only from the point of injury to medical treatment. It's only point of injury, non-medical personnel. Medevac says all this stuff. It provides en route care. So it's a designated platform that provides en route care. So you got a corpsman or something on board. AE is primarily it's Air Force. Air Force supports fixed wing. So they're gonna need it. So for AE, you gotta have a flight. You gotta have a flight line. It's gotta be an airport, essentially. We got some stuff in Africa with a lot of contract AE that you don't need as much, you know, as secure of a flight line if you're not trying to land a C-17 or something. But those guys use C-130s and larger, and it's normally at the airport. And it's normally for AE. They normally come to like Royal Creek facilities. So it's gonna be a fixed facility that they're flying, that the Air Force probably gonna be close to, where they're gonna come in and grab a casualty. That's normally for the long transport. And then en route care is en route care. Next slide. All right. So you got some medical considerations for patient entering medevac. You gotta make sure they're able to withstand it. So if somebody's not ready to be transported, don't transport them. So that's the primary response. You gotta make sure they're able to withstand the travel, whether that's vehicle or flight. You gotta prepare them for it. So that's when all medical interventions in place, or whatever you're gonna do at that point. Those things are in place and secured. Patient covered securely. So we're talking about preparing them for the flight. So give them a woolen blanket. I know that's in red. You guys might see that, but you gotta make sure you know, you've done all your hypothermia measurements, along with a luminized blanket. Letters, you gotta secure them down. It says all personal belongings and medical records accompany the patient. We're talking about a medevac, so even at the battalion level, at the unit level, if you're seeing somebody with this injury or illness, you call it a medevac, you're gonna prepare them for it. So you're gonna make sure all the documentation is there. Sometimes it's an ambulatory patient, so they got their, they got their 3-day bag and their passport and all that stuff that they need. And the same thing goes for a ship. You just gotta make sure they're prepared to travel.
The Peter validating flight surgeon was on the last test. For that at least.
Yeah, for AE. Yeah. Yeah, for area evacuation, it's got to be validated by a theater flight surgeon. So they're not gonna file that casualty until it's validated. So normally when they put in that patient PMR, that patient movement request, you gotta have a flight surgeon somebody that's gonna validate that request before the medevac's gonna come. So great point. And you say you saw that on the last test, and it's in red. Theater validated surgeon. All right. Patients evacuated from Royal 2. Determining President's outpatient requiring evacuation from that facility. Brigade surgeon. So that's Army term, but the brigade surgeon determines the evacuation precedence. So the battalion surgeon, from the brigade surgeon. So we're talking about from a Royal 2 facility. So Royal 2 facilities is normally at the MLG level or higher. Battalion surgeons and stuff, we don't have Royal 2 capabilities. But each service component, it says brigade surgeon, each service component, whether it's Army, Navy, Marine Corps, or Air Force, Royal 2 should have a brigade surgeon that's higher, not a battalion surgeon. So if you see battalion surgeon, it's not the right answer, brigade surgeon. All right, consult should be done with the FST chief surgeon. So it's saying from that Royal 2 facility, when we put in a patient movement request, the consult is done by the surgeon. So it's saying the surgeon or the senior nurse. So in this case, it would probably be the FRSS. We're talking about Marine Corps. The senior nurse or the surgeon at that Royal 2 facility or the FRSS or the Army FST, they're going to do the consult for a patient that's got to get moved. Next slide. All right. Implications for aviation environment. So we're talking about, the patient's getting ready to fly. So we got to, by the time monitoring, do it. Take a look at this stuff. You gotta make sure all the stuff is in place for the altitude effects and the strict mobility. So it's gonna be a long flight. I'm gonna keep watching these. Secure airway prophylactic. So you gotta most patients. Go ahead.
Sorry, the cabin altitude restriction was also on the test for eye injuries. I don't know that one. I don't know if anybody else remembers it.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So when you guys take a look at this instruction because it's listed right here. When you guys start three-letter straps, but like the whole 9, it's all listed right here in the instruction. But and you saw the cabin altitude restrictions. So you got to consider those things when you have like pulmonary disease. So we put chest tubes in if it's going to be a flight. You got to consider the altitude effects. So as we go up in altitude, the air is going to expand. So if you got a lung injury, you got to put in a chest tube or something. It's going to cause problems. Same thing for penetrating eye injuries. And it gets colder. So anyways, take a look at this, the cabin altitude restrictions that was on the test. CAS got to be valve. Just got to prepare this patient to go up in altitude, as well as the reason. I'm pretty sure the reason the CAS part is valve in case it starts swelling and all kind of other stuff. But next slide. Just got to prepare the patient for aeromotive evacuation. I'll do it. Thanks. So for sea burning, the biggest thing is they have to be externally decontaminated. You got to be decontaminated before they go on the bird, or you're just going to cause a big problem. So we're talking about aeromedic evacuation, but even in a tactical scenario, patients not leaving the point of entry until they decline, or you're just going to contaminate the rest of us. But so the patient must be externally decontaminated for sea burning situations. Movement may be delayed, aircraft decon time available, so it can cause problems. Whether that's, you got quarantine diseases, But whether it's chemical, biological, or specialist biological, you're gonna cause a problem. So they gotta get decon. I don't care how bad you wanna get them out of here. I just went to some training a couple weeks ago, sea burner training, where we had the point of injury piece. We took it through the decon line, and then one scenario I was in the aid station. So at this point, the patient should have been decon. We're going to the aid station. The guy had a mask on his face. I'm like, come on, man. Like, he's not decon, we still got the mask on. You know, so we stopped at the entry. We had to stop, it slowed down everything. Had to do RSDL all around the mask again and get the mask off, just to make sure he wouldn't contaminate the rest of us. So, it caused a problem. People were confused. I'm like, it's not going in until we decon the face. So I can't do that. So, anyways, you got to decon first. You're just gonna slow things down. That's all that's saying. Movement may be delayed. So for AE, again, it's Air Force predominant. So these are the flights: C-130, KC-135, and the C-17. It's fixed wing. Like I said, soft. Those guys do something a little different, but that's still fixed wing for area evacuation. Primarily it's fixed wing. Then you got the liaison team, 4 to 6 people, usually co-located with MTF. I don't think that's probably after your pack or something. Let's see here. Staging facilities are generally located major transit points. So the Air Force also does the staging piece. They have the AMAGs, which is it's like a roll-through facility, but it's primarily for staging. Like the other side, EMFs and the Army Cash hospitals, they'll go forward and set up in the field. Air Force has a roll-through facility, but it's primarily for staging. So they're right on the flight line. So flight line hospital, right on the airport. It's not like ours, we're different. Patient normally held for 2 to 6 hours prior to evacuation. That's even coming from so for area evacuation, even if the patient is inside the hospital, a roll-through facility, a theater hospital, before they do an aeromatic evacuation, they're going to take them down to the staging area, which sometimes is right next to the hospital, like adjacent. They're going to be there for 2 to 6 hours. They're just going to that's just for monitoring purpose, make sure the patient's stable and they're ready to fly. It's going to be a long flight. And the staging facilities can have up to 100 beds. So you guys did the quiz. I got that wrong on the quiz. I put 150. It's 100 beds. So 100 beds. They're normally held for 2 to 6 hours, and it's 4 to 6 people. So not 4 to 6 hours, 2 to 6 hours. All right, next slide. So, but know that it's all over the quiz. I'm sure it's been on the exam. Those are easy questions. So for evacuation presidents, when we talk about medevac, for urgent casualties, it's within an hour. Immediate AE to save life alert. So people start moving quick, but for urgents, it's only within an hour that you're gonna be medevac. We got our golden hour. That's a requirement. So it's gonna be within an hour. And as far as the area evacuation piece, they try to do that ASAP. For priorities, within 4 hours. With 24-hour AE. I think on the quiz they had a ratio of like both of these were together on the quiz, but 4 hours for medevac and that's medevac, casevac, same. And then within 24 hours for area evacuation. All right, so that's for a priority casualty. So if I got a priority casualty, I got 24 hours to come grab the patient. Go back, and then you guys saw the routine. Hope you saw the routine, but take a look at it. All right, now. Alright, yeah. 24 to 72 hours. So for a routine patient from point of injury, they got 24 hours to medevac that patient. As far as AE is concerned, 72 hours, not 96. Alright, reporting the patient for AE. Physician consult, it's going to take a physician consult. I think we saw earlier from an FST, it's going to be, you still got the surgeon and the senior nurse. That's going to do the consult, but it's got to have a consult. Where they identify the point of contacts. Let's see, show up and carry, communicate physician treatment and patient. Okay, within 24 hours, 24 to 48 hours. And we've got to make sure they got enough supplies when it comes to medication. Medication and supplies, especially there's going to be bandage changes and stuff that they got to do. When they medevac for area evacuation, got to make sure they got enough supplies for that for 24 to 48 hours. responsibility, go back one? I don't know, going back and forth. Okay, got it. All right. So, so these are the point of contacts, Patient Movement Requirements Center, PMRC. So, PMRC is what who really coordinates this flight. Physicians and surgeons we put in the console in the request, the patient movement request, and PMRC, they're the ones that coordinate it all. And this is their point of contact. Next slide. All right, flight surgeon responsibilities. So, yeah, I mean, they have the authority to determine whether somebody's ready for flight. So we might say, yeah, he's ready to go, and you got some surgeon on the other end, some flight surgeon that's not here, that's got to validate that. They can say no. So, they want to make sure he's at a certain VP or what have you. So, so flight surgeons have the authority to determine whether the patient is ready. And they got to validate it. Physicians, so the physicians submit the request, and only a validated flight surgeon and the PMRC can validate those requests. So you got the flight surgeon that's got to validate, the PMRC is going to look at everything, and then they're the ones that's pressing the button. All right, validation versus clearance. AE clearance is a medical care event. All right, okay. So the validating piece is make sure it makes sense. So the validation makes sure it makes sense. That's the logistical piece. The clearance is the medical piece. And if you guys, like even our military working dogs, they got to get cleared. So they're not gonna fly, even if it's a routine flight. The dog has got no updated physical, no updated dental exam. It gets crazy. They're not cleared to fly. So the clearance is a medical event, and the validation is logistical validation. Next. All right, the request. The originating physician submits the request. PMRC validates it, and the flight surgeon. So the flight surgeon is the one that's clearing them, looking at all the medical pieces and saying, okay, yeah, he's stable enough, he looks good. It's been long enough. For the most part, it's the time that they're waiting on. Make sure he's going to be stable over a period of time before they clear him. All right. So these are the steps for patient requests. I know we were kind of saying the same thing over and over again. They determine the need for a critical care transport team. That's normally when the AE comes out. It's normally a CSAT a team on board that's gonna use for movement and stay out here. They're gonna be the ones monitoring all the tubes and all that stuff while they're flying. If it's burns, so when they put that request in, it's, you got different resources, but you got a CSAT. But if it's burn, it gets a little different. All right, determine patient movement items must be validated by the flight surgeon, verified by the flight surgeon. Determine patient movement resident. Okay, so the surgeon does this. Whatever he needs, he or she has communicated. Next. All right. Patient requires CSAT transport. Yeah. So CSAT's intensive. It's somebody that's on a ventilator. Some of our burn patients, because burn patients, they might have a Foley in place, but the fluid input and output is critical. So you have a CSAT for a burn patient, plus their temperature and all the other jazz. The medications normally with a burn patient. A lot of pain meds, a lot of fluid, a lot of stuff coming out, a lot of monitoring of the lungs and stuff. So, all right, and most of those patients, again, when you're doing AE, if it's a critical patient, they're going to be intubated and all that other stuff. So you got a lot of stuff going on. So you're going to CSAT that. All right, indicators for CSAT. There you go. Same thing I just mentioned. These are the indicators. If a patient's intubated, they're going to hold out of fluid. More than 10 units of blood in the past 24 hours. That's a critical patient. Yeah, those things. So anything that's going to require like constant monitoring, you're going to request a CSAT. Next slide. All right. This is the makeup. You got an intensivist, critical care nurse, and a cardiopulmonary technician. This is end of the transport checklist that's utilized. Humanitarian transport requests. Of course, these can take a long time. It can take more than 6 months. Keep that in mind. It can take a long time. Yeah. It's of course, this takes time, so it's a stable patient. But it's something that, I mean, I know it says fixable in red, but, so if you're doing a humanitarian transport, it's something that can be repaired, something can be done. Sometimes people have patients that like a terminal, and they put in a request, it's gonna get denied, but, but anyways, for humanitarian, it's something that we can fix, but it's a stable problem, and the local country can't do it. This is true, all children must have an attendant, and I mean, this request, they go way up. It's got to be, and especially, it's normally somebody in the country can't do it. So it's normally for humanitarian, it's a local national. So it's got to make sense. It's got to win us some gains. It's got to be beneficial for the operational force or something crazy. So it's got to go all the way up. You got some people that's going to be involved in it. Yeah, and then of course the clearance must cover the patient. We're talking about pediatrics primarily, but sometimes an adult will have an escort. But so both of them got to get cleared. The patient and the escort has to get cleared. It goes all the way up. All right. Next slide. Okay, sorry. Are you good? Actually, I think that's it. Yeah.
So, what's the next chapter?
This.
What's the next chapter on the daily RP?
It's chapter 6.
Okay.
Damage control, yeah.
So you can.
Okay, good. Alright, this should be real quick, man. Damage control. I shouldn't have said man, but. Alright, so 90% of combat fatalities is occur for 75% non-survivable, 25% survivable, potentially survivable. And of the potentially survivable, 90% die of hemorrhage. Yeah. So it's saying that, and then down to the bottom, because you may see it, but although bleeding is the main cause, they don't have to be life-threatening. So people are dying that shouldn't die. All right, so got that. All right, so we're talking about hemorrhage control. So under fire, of course, move from the line of fire. This is care under fire. Get them out of there. Stop gas, so conduct control, obviously external bleeding. Use a tourniquet if you gotta use a tourniquet. Don't endanger yourself. Use not common sense, but use some tactical sense. And stay engaged in the fight. What's highlighted here is do not endanger yourself with a casualty with unnecessary treatment. So this is just carrying the fire. Just if it's bleeding bad enough, just to go on a tourniquet, go on a tourniquet. Just apply some pressure and get out of there. You're under fire, so get out. All right. Got torso, so it's on. All right. Open fracture amputations, most external hemorrhage is the most common cause, massive bleeding. All right. So internal bleeding has a high mortality rate. And our main concern with internal hemorrhage is going to be hypertension. So we're trying to, keep this on a little different now, but. So it's saying that controlled resuscitation should be implemented. Internal torso bleeding requires surgical control. This was really good. All right, I was ahead of myself on this. But direct pressure, you guys know about hemorrhage control, man. Hold pressure for 5 minutes. Foreign body should not be removed. You may have a foreign body on the artery that's providing a little stability to that bleed. You pull out the foreign artery, unless it's hindering transport, but foreign body shouldn't be removed. All right, so you're gonna elevate. Do some pressure, apply pressure to the pressure points. Proximal artery that can slow it down. The tourniquet if needed. If previous techniques fail, so. I'm trying to see. I know this is coming from revision 4, so there's a later revision out. But direct pressure, elevation, pressure points, so proximal artery pressure, and then a tourniquet. All right, there's a hemostat may be used to clamp a vessel, especially with open abdominal wounds. You can clamp vessels. It's a junctional bleed. Implants decrease the bleeding associated with fractures. That makes sense. Scalp bleeding can be significant. It's gonna look terrible. Just hold some pressure. It can be a little harder to control as well because the scalp is perfused. The scalp and the face perfused pretty good. All right. So consider tamponade or Foley. So you can use a Foley to tamponade wounds to try to get it, especially when they're talking about using a Foley if you got a tracking injury like a gunshot wound. You can place a Foley in, inflate the bulb, trying to control the bleeding. But the theory behind it is you go in the wound track, you inflate it with fluid or something, it provides that pressure and just compartmentalizes the bleed. All right. Alright, so dressing for hemostasis, apply dressing. Do not remove the first dressing. So if you got I'm being practical. Don't remove the first dressing. So if you got to put a dressing on and start bleeding through it, make sure you pay attention. Apply another dressing on top of it. Just apply more pressure. But if it's done wrong, take it off and fix it. If it's done wrong. But it says do not remove the first dressing. So don't remove the first dressing. All right. So somebody's basically saying for coagulopathy, if somebody's hypothermic, it's gonna reduce their chances of forming a clot. So you want to make sure you prevent hypothermia. That's all it's saying. Use warm fluids or whatever you got to do. Prevent and treat hypothermia to improve their coagulopathy. All right, combat gauze and stuff. Those agents are used. It says, I'm going to read this out loud. For pressure dressings do not succeed. Recommended that a tourniquet be used. The first agent and the first agent be a combat gauze. All right, so they recommend if you got a pretty good bleed, first agent's combat gauze, use tourniquet. Alright, so organ perfusion must be carefully balanced against the risk of increasing bleeding as BP rises. It says small volumes of fluid are required with decreased ventilation. So it's a balance, it's a shock, so it's hypoxia, it's hypotension. We wanna get the blood pressure up, and we wanna take care of the organs, perfuse the organs. So I know teacher procedure guidelines will change a little where we're going directly to blood instead of like normal saline and LR. But we want to perfuse the organs, but just saying as you increase the BP, they may bleed out more. Okay, shock resuscitation and vascular access. I'm looking at the last slide right quick. So it's saying, just back to the last slide where we're talking about permissive hypertension. So it says that it doesn't say that here, but hypotensive resuscitation. So resuscitate somebody with a lower BP is acceptable. So we do hypotensive resuscitation where we kind of maintain the BP at 90. So you don't want to try to. So it's saying when you treat now, especially internal bleed, we're talking about shock. You don't want to get the BP up to 120. A 90 systolic, you're good because you want to maintain your class. So it's saying that hypotensive resuscitation is acceptable. That's from the last slide. All right. So the goal is to maintain adequate perfusion. We're trying to oxygenate the organs and cells. So it's saying that the majority of casualties don't need IV before they get to the MTF. So a lot of guys don't. If it's like a through and through gunshot wound, most of them don't need IVs. It says IV fluid. Excuse me. So So continuous resuscitation, 2 liters of crystalloid, do 2 large bore IVs is not appropriate in all situations. So if you see that, 2 liters of crystalloid, 2 large bore IVs, that's not, yeah, we don't do that anymore. Probably do it with a burn patient, that's probably about it, but, okay. So some of the signs, some of the things you're looking for adequate perfusion. Can't refill less than 2 seconds. And we're looking for acidosis. These are different types of shock. Familiarize yourself with that. Shock is shock, but it's got different causes. The biggest thing, we want to make sure we're treating the cause. So different things cause shock. So as we're treating for shock, we want to make sure we're treating the right cause for shock. All right, hypovolemic control of bleeding. Let's see, SpO2. You want to secure air if you have to, but you want to make sure that they keep the SpO2 up. Diagnose and treat pneumothorax could be contributing to your blood pressure problems. All right, I know I'm out of time here. Trying to go too far. So we're talking about some predictors for massive transfusion. Some considerations. You know, if the patient starts to get acidotic, that BP starts to fall, heart rate's up pretty high. Those are indicators to go ahead and try to get some fluid on board. Let's see some here. Early blood products. I shouldn't be in chapter 7.
Keep on.
Okay.
Yeah, because we just combine them all.
Alright. Okay. Alright. Sorry about that.
Which chapter you get?
Yeah, I'm on chapter 9. Okay. Yeah, so all open wounds are contaminated. It should be closed primarily. I mean, should not be closed. And, I'm trying to see anything. So life overland. So it's antibiotics aren't replacement for surgery. So even though we give antibiotics, we give combat pill packs, you still gotta go to still want a medevac casualty. Alright, yeah. Life overland again. Alright, y'all. I'm out of time to even try to cover this.
Yeah.
Alright. That's a lot. I got 9 and 20. So when but I didn't even touch chapter 9 yet. Limited. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a foundation.
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna glance through this. That's something you guys may not know, and we'll take a look at it. But this is wound care. Especially after you do any kind of exploration, we're gonna give antibiotics. So let me see something. You should expect that. And then, of course, if we do a wound care, you might want to splint the wound afterwards. Fascia. Yeah, the fasciotomies, you guys may not be doing. Hopefully, you guys aren't doing fasciotomies, but sometimes it's required. We do fasciotomies to prevent compartment syndrome. So you may see that. That's the only reason we do fasciotomies to prevent, whether it's a burn, a crushing, or what have you. We do fasciotomies to prevent compartment syndrome, which is that, of course, they have decreased circulation, like at the hands or something, severe pain. So for muscles, when they talk about 4 C's, we're talking about excised and non-viable muscle. So in combat, and this is Role 1 care, if you got some injuries and casualty going to be prolonged, then we have to consider this. So we're gonna have to start taking out dead muscle, or they're probably gonna die from infection. So prior to us medevacing them, if we're sitting on the casualty, you're gonna look for color, contraction. So basically, you just looking at the muscle and you're touching it. It should be, have a lot of contractility, consistency. It's gonna look completely different. It's like bad meat. You gotta see bad meat. At a certain point, you'll see where the good meat is and bad meat. It's the same way, and we gotta cut out the bad meat. So they call that radical debridement. We do it. It's Role 1 care. Foreman and IDCs and docs do it. Okay. Crush syndrome. Anyways, crush happens after crush. And the problem is going to be, we're concerned about the byproducts of crush. So electrolytes can be crazy, protein. So our primary concern with crush syndrome is renal failure. We're concerned about the kidneys because all the damaged tissue your body's trying to get rid of it. So with crush, like burns, is going to require a lot of fluids. Will probably be fasciitis and stuff like that. Combat extremities, developing compartment syndrome within 48 to 72 hours. Okay, yeah, so just being mindful of that. Depends on how, when you got your mechanism of injury, you want to be mindful of crush. Cold injuries, 27. Okay, let's go to 28 real quick. The soft tissue stuff. Yeah. So we cleaned it out. Antibiotics are not a replacement for surgery as far as the last chapter. Of course, when you have soft tissue injuries, consider crush. Consider fasciotomy. Know those 4 C's when you're dealing with muscle: the color, consistency, and contractility. But consider those things. 28 is talking about radiological injuries. All right, some seed burning stuff may occur. I think our primary it occurs with dirty bombs. I think the primary is like inhalation injuries, but we'll keep moving. Dirty bombs, it's a nuclear bomb. These 4 factors: how big it was, where did it burst, the height of burst, environmental conditions. Shielding the troops. So if you're inside or something like that, you're not too concerned about radiological impact. But if you're outside in the open, okay, they may have some exposure. So consider all that stuff. Wind direction, all that stuff has it. If it's environmental conditions, primarily talking about wind direction. So if you're upwind, then it's not a real concern. All right. You got these. Consider from the detonation, you got blast, thermal. And then you got the radiation piece. With radiation, you got different types of ways. Clothing protects some of it, but if somebody's behind a wall, I think it's like greater than 10 inches or so, they should be just fine. All right. The one thing about dirty bombs, man, that's one thing it does do. It denies access for a long time. So if they want to, we might cause a few casualties, but that land is going to be no good for a long time. Okay? You guys take a look at this. It's talking about the yield. Hopefully you don't see any questions about the yield, but you may. Of course you got rat health, but you still got to do triage. You got if there's multiple injuries, you're going to treat the other injuries. We're going to decom, but we're going to treat the injuries. All right. I don't know what, deleterious?
I've never heard that part.
Yeah? Okay. Alright.
Yes.
Okay. So take a look at this. Like I say, so you still got immediate, so it's still immediate. Radiation injury without proximal symptoms. For trauma combined with radiation, all surgical procedures must be complete within 36 to 48 hours. So you may see that again. So with trauma, it's got to be, procedures must be complete within 38 to 48 hours, 36 to 48. Use buddy care for minimal pet casualties for expectant and supportive care. Large doses of analgesics will just support them. I don't know what that is. Why? Make sure you know what this lethal dose. I don't know if that's a beautiful milligrams. I've never seen that before, so alright. You gotta go back and take a look at that. These are potential injuries from a radiological attack. So they probably have burns to the eyes, flash burns in general. Blast injuries, you consider MOIs if you suspect injuries. Thermal burns, and then you got the rat health piece. Yep. Yeah, so decon, they say removing the clothing is going to take away like 90% of the contamination. So you might want to remember that. Copious irrigation. Yep, it's going to be crazy. It's going to get stupid. We're going to have a lot of casualties, so the medical teams will be overburdened. We talked about this earlier, all the casualties should be decon before you medevac, it should be decontaminated. Alright. It should be planned and drilled. As far as the casualty management should be planned and drilled. Let me just take a quick look at this. So when you read through the instruction, they do give a few more percentages as far as the burn, thermal. So you might want to take a look at that, like 50% burns, 35% thermal injury. So take a look at that. Be an easy question. It goes a little more in depth with lethal dose. So you might want to take a look at that just to familiarize yourself with it. A little bit of chemistry in this one. And it's a decent read. I always encourage you guys to read over the instruction at least once. Just familiarize. Even the emergency surgery and some of those other ones that I'm pretty familiar with. Just reading over it, you can get a better picture. The PowerPoints are condensed, so you could be missing some things, and we learn differently, so take a look at it. There was a lot of chapters, but I wish you guys the best. If you got any questions, you can reach out to me. I can help you digest it and get past whatever you're stuck at. But that's all I got. All right. Any questions? Oh, I do. That's right. And I was about to punch out of here. I think I closed mine since you guys showed up. I do have one more. One fault. And yeah. This is gonna be quick. Alright. We kinda touched on this, health service support, we touched on it. So we'll cover it. A lot of stuff is repetitive. Over and over again. This one's a little bit more overarching, so this comes from the Joint Pub. So the Joint Publications are where we get our doctrine. So we went over, when we covered the Marine Corps, HSS, all that stuff, it stems from the Joint Pub. Every service component is required to have those same HSS requirements in place when it comes to Role 1. So we all have medics, we all have surgeons at the unit level. We've all got environmental health officers, medical planners, and we've all got Role 2 assets. So when it comes, like we got the Navy Marine Corps team, we got the FRSS, we got CRTSs. So those are Role 2. That's damage control surgery that provides that stabilization care. And then we all provide Role 3 facilities, which are EFMD, like what is that? Expeditionary. Anyways, the hospital. I'm using the term right now.
EMF?
EMF, yeah. Expeditionary medical facility, whatever. So the Navy provide EMF, we got the comfort. Air Force has their AMEDS, Army has their cash hospital, so every service component provides role 1, role 2, and role 3 care. Alright, so we'll get into, so this is gonna be chapter 1, yeah.
Yep. I'll test that clicker, chief, I know
Oh.
plug it in order to back up.
Oh man, it's not working. I wanted to hit the red button, but I don't know what it'll do.
Try it.
Yeah, there we go. So, we're going to cover chapter 1, interrelated health system that shares medical services, capabilities, and specialties among service components. So again, it's a joint pub, we're talking about joint HSS. And I should have kept reading, but so we're talking about among service components, partner agencies and partner nations. So our role 2, like there's a Spanish role 2, there's a French role 2, Italian role 2. It's a NATO concept, so we all have it. So with joint HSS, we just have, we utilize each other's assets as well as in a service. Like a lot of, I don't know if you guys have, a lot of Navy guys get augmented to go support FSTs. FST that's an Army construct, but we still support it. It's purple medicine. All right. So HSS, so you got sustainment, you got protection. HSS piece, the planning piece, and the medical logistics aspect, and then you got the four-star protection, which is the PMT, EHO aspect. All right. And it goes from point of injury to definitive care. So from point of injury to recovery, all the way back to comas. All right, and we're all service components, we're all responsible for making sure that like those echelons exist. All right, so these are principles to joint HSS. It's got to meet these requirements. That's why, and if you look across the services, we all meet these requirements. So it's got to conform with the mission. That's why we do mission planning, to make sure it makes sense. We talking about HSS. So it's got to be close proximity. Short trauma tunes, we talk about short trauma tunes are co-located with battalions, can be co-located with battalions, but the FRSS, I mean, they're right down the street. They're pretty close. Got to be flexible to support the mission, the op plan, operations plan, mobile. This one, I think earlier we saw something talking about it being modular, but it's got to be mobile and modular. It's got to provide continuity of care from point of injury all the way to the states. And we got to have command and control. So that's why a lot of surgeons are responsible for coordinating this. The command officer got to have a little command and control. Yeah. All right. So these are the overarching capabilities. We talked about TCCC. So point of injury care, forward resuscitation, which is the damage control surgery, en route care from that point. Or we got our CSATs. We got to provide en route care. Aeromedic evacuation. We all provide theater hospitalization. We talked about the Air Force has the staging piece, the AMAS, and that's in theater. And then the Army has the cash, and we have the EMF, all in theater hospitalization. And then definitive care, which is components. Germany, States, Bethesda, Portsmouth. All right. DHA, so Defense Health Agency, they're responsible for providing combat support. For all branches of service. So this is our new purple medicine. They support the combat commanders. So DHA is to make sure we have. That's when a lot of these augments and stuff come from. Make sure we have combat commanders have what they need to do, and that's all request driven. I think that is it. Well, let me look over this. That really is. So they talked about the principles of HSS. So the conformity, flexibility, mobility, all that stuff. Make sure you know that. As far as the capabilities, we talked about first responder care, TCCC, and in the instruction it goes over TCCC again. You got, and just to, so I'm gonna state it because it's written here, but with TCCC you got the care under fire, you got your tactical field care, and you got your evacuation care, CASVAC care. So they do list those 3 phases of TCCC in the instruction. But that all falls on the first responder. And then we have the forward resuscitative care, which we should have available surgical services. It has listed here surgical service for trauma, like general surgery. So those roll two we talked about, they do appendectomies and stuff like that as well. Thoracic surgery and orthopedic surgery. So the surgeon that can do that stuff. They'll crack your chest and do all that stuff right in theater. That's at the roll two. Okay, and then the theater hospitalization. In essentially, we talked about this earlier. The theater hospital is designed to either treat guys and return them to duty in theater. That's their responsibility, as well as making sure a patient's stable enough to fly. So, I mean, they're doing surgery, but their surgery is only to stabilize somebody to fly. Or if it's something simple that you can do surgery and return to duty, but that's it. And definitive care, that's back here. And definitive care is restoration and rehabilitation. So that's what the guys do back stateside. So that's our joint plug. All services do it. Just remember the principles and the capabilities of HSS. You know, look over the HSS stuff we covered for the Marine Corps. And rad health and hemorrhage control. So it's kind of simple. Alright. So now that's all I got. I'm finished. Again, if you guys have any questions, I don't mind helping you guys digest it. Take a look at the instruction, make sure you don't miss anything.
Appreciate you.
Shot this. Hopefully a whole lot of 8 to 1 this
Hey, take a quick 5 for close next one. Right, shoot that.
Oh, excuse me.
Well, I mean, if you're entering medieval times, you're patient. Why don't you go fucking change it? Your dashing smile and beautiful hair can't get you your way.
I'm probably taking 2. No, I'm taking 6. Well, first one is like I got mine if I watch each chapter.
I'll decide this for you as well. CRP, 40.
I know. 21.
CRP?
21.
You're like the old fucking child.
Oh, yeah. I already have it pulled up. I'm prepared.
You want me to stand up and fly for you?
What?
I feel like that's a joke.
What?
I don't have any gold stars to hand out.
I don't know what you're saying. If you can speak up a little bit louder. We're on a break.
Is this a recording? Sorry.
No, you stop it.
Did you? Are you stopping it right now?
In between.
It's on still.
Oh, no, he told me he was. What do you want from me?
I'm doing like 3 things, so it's still running.
Depends on what else. You don't know what you graduate. Depends on what else. Maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
Alright, we're gonna get started. This is gonna be Field Hygiene and Sanitation Chapter 2. Alright, so heat injuries. Heat acclimatization requires at least 3 to 5 days, and full will take 2 weeks. You're going to need a half to 1 1/4 quarts of water per hour, 3 gallons, 12 liters per day in a hot, dry climates. Water 67 degrees and store faster, and do not take salts. Use the balm with sun protection. And cold injuries, there's 2 types. There's freezing and non-freezing. So you got frostbite and chilblains, trench, immersion foots. Frostbite occurs when the skin is exposed to winds less than 5 miles per hour and temperatures of 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So I've seen the 30 degrees before. And then trench immersion foot results from long exposure to wet cold conditions or immersion in water 50 degrees. I've also seen the trench immersion foot as one of the possible answers. Exposure of 12 hours or more will cause injury. Shorter duration at 32 degrees will cause the same injury. And how to prevent cold weather injuries. You're going to wear loose layers, keep moving big muscles, avoid tobacco, alcohol, eat, protect yourself. Do not sleep directly on the ground near exhaust or enclosed area where cars burning for obvious reasons. Considering arthropods, yesterday we discussed DEET in detail, and you're going to be applying that. It'll last 8 to 12 hours. For mithorins, we discussed avoid aftershave lotion, cologne, or scented soaps. I guess it could attract bugs. And wash your uniform every 7 days. Use anti-malaria pills and sprays. Considering animals, don't handle the animals. If you get by a snake, try to bring the head of the snake or accurate description. And handle freshly killed snakes with a stick. Shake out your clothing and clothes with bugs.
Thank you.
Food, water, wastewater, and disease. Parasites are amoebas. You already have tapeworms consumed in water or good food. Use iodine tablets when treated water is not available. There's 2 tablets in a canteen, shake to dissolve, and wait 5 minutes. Loosen capillary leakage, wait 25 minutes. I've seen on the test where they ask you, and they'll have like different methods of cleaning your water or using tablets. I've seen where they ask you how many iodine tablets on one. I've also seen where they basically explain what we just explained how to do it, but it'll say like wait 2 minutes, or they'll change something around in it on how you would actually clean your water. Also use chlorine ampules, wait 30 minutes before drinking. The chlorophlox tablets, that's how you use those, and unleaded household bleach, wait 30 minutes before drinking. When you're going to do the boiling method, you're going to boil for 5 minutes. And I guess we're saying emergency 15 seconds will help. You're basically saying better than nothing. Do not attempt to treat suspected indecent contaminated water. Use soap and potable water to wash hands. Wash your utensils properly and dispose of waste immediately. Personal hygiene and physical mental fitness. Use talcum powder in moist areas. Brush your teeth and gums. Sleep when possible. Proper hearing protection. Toxic industrial chemicals. Bore gun gases. Use onboard vehicle ventilation. Keep the bore evacuator well contained. Solvents, greases, and oils. Use safety soldered solvent. Biological waste. Wear PPE. Dispose of the waste accordingly. Controlling biting insects. You're going to need 1 or 2 gallon sprayer, refuse insecticide, and individual repellents. So D for method. You're doing all about D. Identify control. These are types of insects: mosquitoes, fleas, lice, ticks, flies, spiders, scorpions, bees. You can read through those. And basically, if you just stay clean and do the other stuff that we said we do, like shake your stuff out, you really don't have to worry as much about spiders in your shoe or scorpions in your shoe, etc. Control domestic rodents. Equipment: tamper-proof rodent bait, rat snap trap, mouse snap trap, and rodenticides, wear chemical resistant gloves, and place dead rodents in bags, seal, and dispose of the landfills or incinerate. So inspecting of food service operations, the self-indicating bimetallic thermometer that reads 0 to 222 degrees Fahrenheit and clipboard. So this is in bold, so somebody's seen it before. 5 factors of potentially hazardous foods. Failing to keep cold 40 degrees or hot above 140. Allowing foods to remain at warm temps between 41 and 139. And preparing foods 3 hours before serving. Fish should be placed in containers when they are above 140 degrees. And supervisor must check the food temp before serving. Laundry water should be at 120 and 140. Disinfect upload for 10 seconds. 4 Mexicans to support 80 personnel. So a lot of these numbers that you pick to use, the dishes should go in the soapy water first, then the clear water at 170 degrees, and the third has 180 just to kill the bacteria. Inspect water containers. Check the interior for excessive cracks, rust, ensures spigots are clean and operational. Check for gross contamination, and water point should never come in contact with the ground. A stream pond would have 5 milligrams of chlorine residual after 30 minutes. Medical may direct higher under other circumstances. And you can use calcium hypochlorite. That's the percentage, 7% chlorine, or the 5 to 6% household bleach. Your waste disposal, you have expedient burial, that's less than 1 week. Incineration, longer than a week. On the march, you can dig a cat hole or waste collection bag. 1 to 3 days, you have big box sacks of saddle trench. Does anybody ever use a saddle trench? Yeah? Yeah. I've seen it done in some stores. Garbage, soakage pits, 30 meters from food service and latrine 100 meters or more from service. So I've seen where they ask you how far away the latrine will be from where you live, and also like the measurements of the cat hole, how you're going to dig it, or the saddle trench. They'll ask you like how many. I think it's asked before how many people and how many days before it. So there's the dimensions for the cat hole, for surface pit, saddle trench, and the tree. Hand washing stations. The soakage pit should be provided for all hand washing and shower facilities. Pillow cakes, hand washing devices in food service and tree locations. Supply of soap and water must be available.
That's it.
Some of them strong on, some of them not.
You just don't know. You don't know until you don't know. It's scary. That's key. I ran into that at least 6 times. There you go. Personal.
The training for food service, you get 100 meters in front of you on it. I hit 100 meters or something. Did you go this one, right? No, it was meters. I hit yards. I'm not fucking helping you. No, I mosquito one? No. Can you do it? There's a church one. It's not that small. It's a mosquito. There's a bunch of mosquitoes. Oh, I have to layer for classes and I was prevention and last one is trying to stay in water areas because that's the only prevention. The rest are like having an activity with mosquitoes.
Alright, let's knock out the next lesson. Now instruction 6100.3 alpha, we changed one deployment health assessment process. The DHA process. Deployment health assessments are used to screen service members prior to deployment to identify health concerns after deployment and to facilitate appropriate care. Deployment health assessments consist of 3 components. There's going to be 3 forms with it: the pre-deployment health assessment, post-deployment health assessment, and the post-deployment health reassessment. They're pretty self-explanatory on when you would use them. DHA is limited to 30 days or greater. Deployment defines as the relocation of forces. Redeployment is the return of personnel from deployment to the home or demobilization station for reintegration and or outhousing. What constitutes a deployment? Ashore for more than 30 days with duties involving operations and components without a fixed MTF. The policy, DHAs are completed electronically and reviewed by healthcare providers, so physician, PA, NCIDC, those are the ones that can sign off. The pre-DHA will be administered at home station or an MPS no earlier than 120 days, that's the same, prior to the expected deployment date, and the post-DHA will be completed close to the return as possible, but no earlier than 30 days from expected redeployment date and no later than 30 days from deployment. PDHRA should be completed between 90 and 180 days after redeployment. And service members who deploy for more than one 30-day period in 12 months will receive the PDHRA concurrent with their annual PHA. And then service members separated for active duty prior to 90 and 180 day window for PDHRA must receive concurrent PDHRA and a separation health assessment. And those returning to drilling status must still complete the PDHRA timeline. Servicemen who are overdue for a PHA, post-PDHA, PDHRA cannot complete the NAVPERS 610/3 Part P and PREMS. And they cannot complete PFA until all requirements are met. That's the website where we were completed. And service members supported by the Army, Air Force, medical providers can use the Army's medical protection system or their system to get a printed copy electronically signed into the record. Alright, so the responsibilities. Deputy NCO, develop, maintain DHA policy, and provide quarterly compliance to NCO. And Commander, U.S. Fleet Command, they're going to provide quarterly compliance to the Office of NCO by the 30th of the month following the end of the quarter. So 30th of the month following the end of the quarter. What UMED does, they'll provide command levels medical services for service members to complete the DHA, maintain deployment health centers to provide support for them, to complete it. Validate the DHA status during the DHA. Incomplete DHA will result in incomplete DHA. The operational command should use MERS to identify service members who require DHAs, send lists to the service members' commands, and provide health record review for the deficiencies when they check in and out. The COs will instruct service members to point to the areas requiring physical health assessments or briefed on deployment health threats. That they complete all health assessments within prescribed frames, and service members who have any health concerns receive appropriate follow-up care, and it's validated upon check-in and check-out. Active duty service members stationed remotely for NTF may call a DoD-sponsored call center. Reserves, there's another number for them. The NMPS shall service member complete or have completed their pre-DHA ensure follow-up for any identified concerns. All conditions resulting in a non-deployed determination shall be documented for further follow-up by service member PCM. These are the forms. Any questions? After you go on a 5-minute break if you want. If you have quizzes to complete, you can complete those.
gonna go ahead and get started. I'm H.M.1 Arcara, I'm with the 6th Marine Regiment, and my periods of instruction are gonna be covering chapters 1 through 8 in the Hospital Plumbing Manual. So starting with chapter 1. So chapter 1 is the heritage of the Marine Corps. It's a fairly short chapter. Going over the wave tops here, just know that what's included here is not necessarily going to be specifically what's on the test, so know that you gotta at least know the generalities. So March 2nd, 1799, Congress mandates that the newly commissioned sailing warships that comprise the first U.S. naval fleet are going to contain a cockpit or sick bay. It's a pretty big deal. So that's a pretty key term there. Navy regulations first listed loblolly boy as an official rate in 1814. Pretty big day for us today. 1799 and 1814. Remember those. Origins. The Hospital Corps became an organized unit of the Navy Medical Department under the provisions of an Act of Congress approved 17 June 1898. Big deal once again. Signed into law by President William McKinley. I've seen on the test where they will do a combination of the two, where the answer is going to be combined of where we combine the name, President William McKinley, and the date. So be wary of that. Women were first brought into the Hospital Corps during World War II, 12 January 1944. Hospital Corps School for Women accepted for volunteer emergency service, or WAVES, was commissioned at the U.S. Naval Hospital, National Naval Medical Center of Bethesda, Maryland. Again, as you go through these things and you remember these facts, sometimes they're in combination, so read the question and the answer more specifically carefully. More about history. 1 October 2005, the dental technician rate, separate enlisted specialty since 12 December 1947. I've seen that merged with the Hospital Corps. To date, there have been 22 Medal of Honor recipients from the Hospital Corps. This is half of all the Medal of Honors awarded to the Department of the Navy when the Plumbing Manual was updated. 14 naval vessels that have been named for Hospital Corps since inception. Occasionally, you'll see that they'll ask to list one or two, so it would be good for you to take a look at that list. That's it. Remember, when we go through these things, especially when you, if you're using some of those paid study assists, some of those questions can be fairly specific. Look at the answers. There's a combination of dates and people. Moving on, so chapter 2, Expeditionary Medicine Administration. So if there was ever going to be a place where you start studying with flashcards, this would be one. There's other sections that I'll be covering, sort of also anatomy and physiology, health records and whatnot, but just list upon list upon list of numbers and letters and abbreviations, right? So you're going to need to be able to go through them fairly quickly, if only to be able to pick them out of the crowd. So, for the NAVMed P117, lots of different chapters there. Lots of different chapters there. You can see chapter 1 is the medical department. It states in generalities how everything is structured. Chapter 2 is medical corps. 6, dental. 9, hospital corps. 15, medical examinations. 16, health records. 19, the fleet marine force. 21, pharmacy. 22, Prev Med. 23, reports, forms, and records. Big, big, big section. So know how that works. Know what these acronyms and numbers are going to relate to. And again, what worked for me was flashcards for that. Next slide. SAM is an administrative management tool that tracks the medical and dental readiness of Navy and Marine Corps operational units. It tracks, right? If you have never used that, it's difficult to sort of equate that to a point of information. Just know that that's one of them. That's a key. SAMS enables healthcare providers to update patient medical information and record medical encounters. Additionally, SAMS is used to track supply inventory, log preventive medicine inspections, report and receive radiation exposure data, and manage medical training. So that's a big deal. That's the biggest difference between SAMS and, let's say, ALTA or CHCS, right? They track a lot more things in here. So if you have not had experience with SAMS, it would behoove you to take a look at the waypoints for that section, because they can get into the specifics. Next slide. Battalion Aid Station, or BAS, right? Direct support to company and platoon corpsmen, provide advanced trauma life support under fire. Normally comprised of 2 medical officers and up to 65 HMs. Again, huge point right there. Huge point. If you're going to remember something from that section, that would be a big thing to remember. Medical facilities, EMF, 500 beds. If you look at these slides, you'll see a distinct color variation, right? And some of the information on here, right? So these are to help you to remember these things. And as you are reading through your material, as you're reading through the instructions and the publications, it would behoove you to learn a skill called reading with a pencil, where you circle things, right? Because most of us don't just learn by repetition, we learn visually. So maybe, just maybe, when you're taking that test, you'll remember you circled that thing or you put a tick mark by it. Fleet hospitals, designed to be used in operations greater than 60 days. 60 days, right? You have to remember that, 60 days. Next slide. There are a total of 8 NMCBs. We're moving on to mobile construction battalions. Home ported in Gulfport and Port Hueneme. 2 places, but 8 NMCBs. The mission of the NMCB, medical and dental support, is to ensure the combat effectiveness of the NMCB by providing the medical and dental needs of the CB. It's pretty simple. Anytime you see what our mission is for any one of these elements, it's going to be medical and dental support. Next slide. That's it. Chapter 3, Healthcare Admin. So, all of you in this room, second class is when you got first. This is sort of the bread and butter as we start progressing. We start moving from being doers and being those who manage, those who are in charge of programs. So, more than just studying this for the advancement exam, it would behoove you to be the smartest person in the room as it pertains to these subject matters. So, without further ado, I alluded to this earlier. So the Armed Forces Health Longitudinal Technology Application, or ALTA, right? It's one of the big software applications that we use. Clerk cannot deny eligibility for health care, can only be done by command designated supervisor personnel, and DEER's eligibility overrides, right? The DD 1172, that's the form that everyone has to do to get sort of enrolled in DEER's. All other family members recently becoming eligible for benefits, new ID cards, expired ID cards must get new ones in 120 days. Sponsors entering active duty, newborns, emergency care, sponsored duty station is outside continental United States. Survivors, all of them are responsible for getting that thing filled out. 1172, don't forget that. Here's eligibility exceptions. The SECNAV designees and foreign military personnel. These personnel can be seen at medical treatment facilities and forced into CHCS and ALTA because of who they are. Categories. So if you're in patient administration, when you're going to be putting someone in, you have to be able to designate them in a category. Obviously, at the top here is our main body of population. 1 Alpha is active duty, that's all of us. 1 Bravo, Reserve and National Guard, and then it gets a little tricky as we move down, right? So 2, active duty family members. Category 3, senior reserve officers, Reserve Officer Training Corps. 4, retired members and their dependents. 5, civilian employees of the federal government, and of course all others in category 6, right? This would be something to put into a flashcard so you'll be able to run through them quickly. Patient bill of rights and responsibilities. There is a delineation between what the rights are and what the responsibilities are, right? This I've never seen on a test specifically that I've taken, but it would behoove you to know these, especially some of the ones that are further down here, because these are fairly common sense. But down here, it gets a little bit tricky, and on a multiple choice test, it's very, very possible to see one of those as multiple choices. And then know the difference between the rights and the responsibilities, right? So programs, the DAPA program, Drug and Alcohol Program Advisor Program, OPNAV Inc. 5350.4 series, know that one. Family Advocacy Program, that's that's SECNAV Inc. 1752.3, and by ViewMed Instruction 6320.0. Those in my deck are definitely flashcards, what those belong to, right? And know them backwards and forwards. So it doesn't help to be able to identify that those 2 instructions are for family advocacy and not be able to go the other way, not being able to recognize those 2 vice versa. Physical readiness. This you should know by heart. This is something that we do twice a year, right? So, OPNAV in 6110.1 series. All personnel will undergo physical fitness evaluation on a semi-annual basis, right? As you study these instructions, pay attention to the bib, because things have changed. Everyone should know this. Things have changed. And rather than sort of nuke the exam, know what's on the instruction that's on your bib. Freedom of Information Act, these are fairly huge as well. A lot of times these have to do with dates and time frames on your exam, right? So officials have 10 working days to respond to the requester, right? Written requests for DON records that explicitly refer to the FOIA must be responded to in accordance with the provisions of the Act. There's some details in there. Know those time frames. Because what they'll do on your test is they'll use time frames for this, and they'll mix in HIPAA, privacy, and whatnot, so you should know those specifically. Again, a good thing to put on the back of a flashcard to be able to know backwards and forwards. 1974, that's a big one. Privacy Act. Established a safeguard to the right to privacy by regulating the collection, maintenance, use, and dissemination of personal information by federal agencies. As you read through that instruction, know that occasionally there will be a scenario that's involved. They'll just list a small 2-cent scenario, and you've got to make a decision of choices based on that scenario, but you have to understand what the program entails. All right, prisoner patients. You'll see 1 or 2 random of these in there, not very many, but as you can see, it's fairly cut and dry, right? 3 categories: enemy prisoners of war and detained personnel, entitled to all medical and dental care, subject to the availability of care facilities, of course. Non-military federal prisoners, authorized only emergency medical care. After emergency care, transferred to non-military institutions to a sentence. And then, of course, military prisoners. An active duty member who is imprisoned overseas and subject to criminal trial by a foreign court normally remains a healthcare beneficiary. Military prisoners whose punitive discharge has been executed but has not completed the sentence is eligible for medical and dental care. Prisoners awaiting execution of a punitive discharge are authorized medical and dental care. As you look through the choices on your exam, a lot of times they are absolute. And I'm not telling you that I can tell you what the answers will look like, but you have to know, right? That a lot of times when it's absolute, it's usually not true. When it says no one will get care or everyone gets care, there are conditions, right? So be aware of that.
That's it for the record. That's it?
Bring you down or bring you up?
And as much as I said that the medical records portion is heavy into numbers and colors and terms, medical logistics is huge for that. Huge, right? Or excuse me, medical records is huge, just like medical logistics is, right? So primary health records, HRECs, right? Health records, outpatient health records, dental records, inpatient records, lots of different kinds. Secondary medical records, know the differences. Know that these exist. There's not just one record. There's two different types, right? Or three, excuse me. And then of course temporary records. The CO has ultimate responsibility for medical records. The patient cannot maintain or keep their own record, right? For long anyway. Occasionally they can check them out, but they've got to bring them back. The Naval Reserve Personnel Center, New Orleans, is the HREC custodian for inactive reserve personnel and is responsible for records preparation and maintenance. Occasionally that'll be a random fact that you'll need to know. You know that. Navy and Marines discharged before 31 January 1994. Requests should be sent to the National Personnel Records Center for records retrieval. Those discharged after 31 January 1994, requests for record retrieval are sent to the Department of Veterans Affairs. So pay attention to that date if the question is asked, right? Pay attention to that date. Next. Family member prefix. These always get tricky as you get further down. It's easy, because all of us start with 2-0, right? 1-2 can be tricky if you've never seen it before. Most of us haven't, right? 3-0 through 3-9, dependent, former spouse. 0-1 to 19, dependent child. Then it gets a little hairy. 40 to 44, dependent mother or stepmother. Dependent father or stepfather for 45 through 49, dependent mother-in-law. And dependent father-in-law for 50 to 54 and 50 to 59, and of course other authorized dependents, and civilian employees at 99, and all others, or excuse me, at 98, and all others at 99. This usually turns into one flashcard for me, so that I can just break it down, go all the way through, so I know it all the way through, and I can pick my answer out of the crowd, as it were. Medical record. The best way to study this is to look at yours, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit more than a digital screen, or if you study in print, looking at these things, because you can correlate it to your hand flipping through, moving through your medical record. Part 1, when we're preparing, is done in pencil. Know which ones those are. Sometimes that's a specific question, right? Includes date of arrival, projected rotation date, home, address, phone number, command UIC. In my head, I can see this when I open up and look through all that stuff. It should be the same for you. Part 2, signed D2005, Privacy Act and pen. Part 3, disclosure accounting record. It's hard to see these ones in the middle here, but you can see these on your screen. Now I know there's a bunch of ditties out there, some appropriate, some inappropriate, that help you remember how these go, right? More than the ditties, I'm a visual person. When I go through my records department, I can see it. I can see it in my head. I don't have a very large company, I have a headquarters company, but when I open it up, I can see those colors. Know these backwards and forwards. Take some time. Go through all of them. That's a big one. It's a big list of, again, letters and numbers. Some of these are part of our jobs for those of us who deal with readiness and whatnot, so it's easy to equate to them. That's why I say look at a medical record, if not yours, right? So you'll know what a 601 is as far as immunizations. So you know what a 771 is as far as eye prescription. Sometimes as I flip through, I'll see it in my head, which one goes first, where my eye exam is, where my surveillance is, and all that. This is a huge list. And as I make my flashcards, each one of these is one. I don't put 10 or 11 on one to try to study in chunks. I'll put it in one, right? So that I can get through all of these. And what's great is if you look in the hospital requirement manual, it'll tell you where they go. So part 1, part 2, so on and so forth. That's where they go. So not just what they are and their nomenclature, but where they go. Dental records. It's even more tricky for those of us who don't move in those circles. Right? Dental record forms. Located in part 1, unmounted radiographs and envelopes. Sequential bite wing radiographs. As you can see, there are lists here. What go in each one. 6600, dental health questionnaire. Dental exam forms. It might be a pain, but I have done that as well. I've gone to dental and I've taken a look at it because it's difficult sometimes to remember these things if you don't get to see one and touch one and see how it goes. These are huge. The Easy 603 Alpha versus the 603. Those I've seen in there. What's the difference between the two? Where do they go? Know those things. Who here studies on their own? Who prefers to study on their own? I do as well. However, I challenge you, not every time, not all the time, not even most of the time, every once in a while get in groups. Find somebody to study with, especially when it comes to something like this. Because there's a lot of information here. And sometimes, one, it's a change of pace to go back and forth rather than flipping over a flashcard. Two, sometimes you'll run into someone who will find a way to remember something differently than you have. Now, that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes I have a way to remember, for example, the colors of the medical records. And if someone tries to tell me their way, I don't want to hear it, because then I'll start mixing up the words and the letters and whatnot, and tan versus brown and all that stuff. It messes with me. But I'm going to give you a couple that I use in here just to help out on some of the more familiar questions that I've seen on several of the exams. So some of the foundational things here. 1850, again, 1853, 1952. These are some of the things that you may or may not have to know, but it's a good thing to be able to at least try to recall, like I said, and I'll say over and over again, pick these dates out of a list. 1850 establishes the Naval Medical Supply Depot in Brooklyn. 1853, Congress authorized a separate manufacturing laboratory that enabled it to produce medical supplies for the Medical Department of the Navy. Very different from those two, right? Or these two are very different from each other. And then in 1952, Naval Medical Supply Depot Brooklyn was transferred to the Bureau of Supply and Accounts. The DLA, that's Defense Logistics Agency, NAVSUP, that's what that stands for, and of course NAVMED.com, that's what that stands for. Definitions, just like with a lot of other things. What's the difference between, for example, anatomy and physiology? What's the difference between this and that? Just see what you can do to remember these in generalities. Logistics encompasses the acquisition, accounting, sustainment. See how these are all broad terms, right, to define logistics. Chief Bureau of Medicine and Surgery established a standard organization structure for medical logistics departments and all naval medical and dental activities within logistics, with logistics responsibilities. Know that even though it says, of course, medicine and surgery, right, they also encompass the logistics part of the house. So don't rule that out right away as one of your answers, because of this list of things that they sort of govern, that they manage, they oversee. So the DLA maintains centralized inventory management and physical distribution, right? We get into more terms. Technically, screens all requisitions to verify that items are available from a mandatory government source of supply, right? Purchasing, commercial procurement action take place. Warehouse, storeroom, receipt control. So as you're learning these terms, it's good to know, like I said, to do the flashcard drills. But if you can sort of picture how it goes from beginning to end. So it starts, if you think of this as the beginning of a timeline, right? Technical review. And then we purchase, and then we store and disseminate. Right, those are some things that can help you sort of, again, pick the right answer out of the lineup. Next. Stock control. After we get into the warehouse, stock control. Responsible for the inventory management aspect of the material held in the warehouse or purchased for direct issue. Equipment management. It's different from stock control. Administers the command's property utilization and disposal program. Right, so it's overview. Right, well, these are overview, but as you can see, administers the program, whereas stock control is responsible for the inventory management aspect, right? Biomed, pretty simple as long as you know what that NEC does, you should be able to pick that out. Then central supply, plans and directs operations necessary to order and receive material. Usually that's a department in a hospital, right? One of the first things that I usually do when I'm studying for exam is I study the bib. So before I even delve into what's in the instructions, what's in the hospital corpsman manual, I will try to memorize NAVSUP P485. When I look at that, that becomes synonymous with the P5010. You should all know what that is, right? Even if you don't know exactly what's in it, you should know what's in there because you may need to look something up in there. Same thing for that, the NAVSUP P485. The NAVSUP manual is designed to institute standardized supply procedures and consists of the following 3 volumes. 1, supply procedures afloat. 2, supply procedures, supply appendices, and 3, supply procedures ashore. So it's kind of weird how they do that. It's not necessarily chronologically, right? When we think of references, we get all the information first and then the appendices later, right? Not for this one. So that's something that should stick out to you when talking about supply. That it goes afloat, appendices, and then ashore. Oh, go back one. Oh, no. So when I think of the P485 and I think about how this works, right? For me, it goes alphabetically. Afloat, appendices, ashore. Volume 1, 2, 3. If that happens another time in here, I'll show you it again. Another thing that helps me remember how it goes. Dragon. Naval supply procedures. NAVSUP P485 establishes policies for operating and managing supply departments and activities. So it's just an explanation, right? But if you can remember that little bit there, sometimes if the question comes up what it is, it could trigger something for you. Oh, it'll go it goes out of order, or after it says, you know, what it is as far as afloat or supply or shore, it goes alphabetically. Next slide, please. 409, more publications, right? Handy reference for personnel responsible for originating and processing. P 5132, there's no easy way to remember this except for repetition. No easy way that I've found. Offline, if you can get with me and help make my presentation better, let me know how you remember this, I would appreciate it. Reiterates Department of the Navy policy and provides equipment management procedures to include budgeting, funding, acquisition, use, maintenance, repair, all of these things in the 5132. Terminology. So a lot of these, as long as you have a decent grasp of the English language, right, you can discern from what it says. Procurement. When we procure something, we go get it, right? Contracting authority. Authority is a key word there, right? Dollar limitations. Acquisition methods. Someone's got to be authorized to review these things. Commitment. It's huge, right? But, of course, because you know what commitment means, you should be able to find the right answer once you will come up with the appropriate response. Obligation, different from commitment. When a qualified purchasing agent enters into a contractual agreement, thereby obligating the government with a vendor for goods and or services. Unauthorized commitment can get you in a lot of trouble, so know the details behind this. When a government representative lacking the authority to enter into a contract on behalf of the government enters into agreement with the vendor for goods and or services. Right? As long as you know the details behind that, you should be okay. Ratification. Process in which an authorized commitment is reviewed by designated personnel. Priority designator. 2-digit number used by the customer to determine the urgency of the requisition items. You will see these on forms. Right? So it's fairly simple to see these definitions and try to remember them. But when you see them on the forms themselves, sometimes it'll help you remember what they're for and where they go. Authorized requisitioner, micro purchase. There's a number attached to that, so try to remember that. Serve mark, we should all know what that is. Source for the purchase of non-medical administrative material, including cleaning gear. All right, so most of us know what serve mark is, and that's a pitfall sometimes on the test. We know what something is, but we don't know what words they use to be able to come up with, again, the correct response. Federal Acquisition Regulations, FAR. Primary regulation used by all federal executive agencies. So that's the key word for me. Federal executive agencies in their acquisition of supplies and services with appropriated funds. Requisition, you should know what that means. Bulk stock, full, unbroken containers. So we haven't divvied up all the catheters yet, right? Consumables, supplies that are consumed or disposed of after use. Material, all supplies, repair parts, and equipment. There's difference. Non-consumables, supplies and materials that are not consumed or disposed of after their use, like the gear that we use, not necessarily the catheters, but the pumps and stuff like that. Machines. Repair parts, self-explanatory. Reserve stock, standard stock. As long as you know the definitions of the word reserve and standard, that should not be a problem for you. Operating budget. Most of us recognize this as OPTAR. I'm sure a few of us have used this on a Block 43 bullet from time to time, right? Know what that stands for. You'd be surprised at how many people have seen OPTAR 3 or 4 times and they don't know what it actually is spelled all the way out. Unused quarterly funds may be carried over to the next quarter. That's an important fact, right? Next. Supply classification systems. A lot of different things, almost as complicated as all the forms that we use, all these serials, right? FSC is made up of 2-digit numeric codes, the Federal Supply Group and the Federal Supply Class, 6500 series, 6505, 08, 9, 10. I'm sure all of us have studied from time to time some sort of warfare qualification. And a lot of times, these will just go in a list. You just have to know it backwards and forwards. But more importantly, when these lists get more robust, next slide. You'll need to know them not necessarily in order, so you got to break them up, right? Another one of these little ditties that I have that's not a ditty, but a way for me to remember. These go alphabetically as well. So when they have it on the exam, it's this number. Tell me which one is the NCB. Well, F comes before N. And since we have two N's, C comes before I. So that's how I remember that. The first one is the FSC, the second one is the NCB, and the third one is the NIN. By show of hands, who has not seen that before? The way to remember that. And that's why I challenge you to try to study in groups. As great as it is to study on your own and to come to places like EAP, sometimes you'll catch a few things here and there. Supply levels are expressed in one of two ways: numerical terms and months of usage. Operating level indicates the quantity of material required to sustain operations during the interval between arrivals of successive replenishment shipments. Safety levels, again, by virtue of that word, you should be able to pick that out. Stockage objectives indicates the minimum quantity of a stock item that is required to support current operations, different from the safety level. And of course, the requisitioning objectives. You never want to order something because you're out of it, right? SAMs, we talked about this earlier. The SNAP automated medical system is the current approved shipboard computer program used to track all aspects of medical supply. So more than just encounters, also covers supplies. More fodder for either your notes or your flashcards. 1348s, 1348s tag 6. So to order standard stock, to requisition material that cannot be identified by NSN. And then of course the 1149, anybody who's been in logistics should will have seen this. And if you haven't, I challenge you to take a look. Just about every one of us should have a supply section or have the ability to speak to someone. Because when you see this thing and what's on it, it helps you to realize what it's for. 1155, order for supplies and services. This form is an official purchase order document and is required whenever an open market order is placed with a vendor. Controlled substance inventory. If you have not been involved in one of these, you will be, especially when you make first. It's conducted monthly. That is key. There's a lot of things that we do daily, weekly, monthly, every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. You need to be able to correlate these time frames to these processes. Bulkhead to bulkhead, annually. Physical count of all the material within a specific storeroom, conducted when a random sampling of that storeroom fails to meet the inventory accuracy rate of 90%. Right? Key there. Monthly, annually, 90%. This thing should stick out for you. Specific commodity inventory. Physical count of all items under the same cognizant symbol for federal supply class. Special material inventory. Physical count of all items that because of their physical characteristics, costs, right, other reasons are specifically designated for separate identification and inventory control. These things are high value, right? These things are important. Special material inventory. Spot inventories, they're unscheduled. Unscheduled. So on top of having to remember daily, weekly, monthly, 90 days, 120, that this is unscheduled. But I think it's the only one that's unscheduled. So that's pretty easy to remember. Unscheduled type of physical inventory, verifying existence of a specific item. Location surveys can be done as a separate action of this item. The goal is to have 98%. So we had a 90%. We have a 98%. Know the difference. Velocity inventory, required on items with a relatively high turnover rate. Sometimes you got to check it again. You use something so much that you got to check the stock again. Velocity, remember, it's moving fast. Random sampling. It is done to measure the stock record accuracy for a segment of material on hand. Some things about how the warehouse is supposed to look. Pretty difficult for those of us who are not LS types or have not been at medlog places. But your aisle should be 1.5 times the width of the largest cart or vehicle that you have. 1.5, right? And for those of us who've ever been part of a safety inspection, everything that we have in the storeroom or in the warehouse has to be 18 inches below the sprinkler heads. A lot of times we mistake that because we hear 18 inches below the ceiling is what we're told, right? Keep it away from the ceiling. But that is the key there, below the sprinkler head. Unit of issue describes how an item is packaged for sale by the distributor. You never buy just one catheter, you buy a box. Right? So no, that way, obviously when it comes up, if you know what the item is, you'll be able to to figure out the definition of it. Reported discrepancy, the 364. This method by which activities report shipping type discrepancies and packaging discrepancies on the part of the shipper. SF 364. How do you pretty much make it right? How do you make a complaint? Hazmat. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with that. That's pretty simple. Suspended or J stock is to store material unsuitable for use. So of all the stock type items, the J stock is the stuff that we can't use. DIMLs, that's the software, it's the Alta of the LS community, right? That is their system. Centrally managed automated system for use by logistics personnel to procure, maintain, and dispose of consumables and equipment. There's scheduled and unscheduled maintenance. Again, by virtue of the description, you should know what that means, or the word, the definition. Capitalized personal property must meet all of the following criteria. So there's a list here, a list. Has an acquisition cost, book value, when applicable, estimated fair market value equal to or greater than $250,000. Right, you'll see that a lot. You'll see that number, as you can see here on the slide, a lot. Minor personal property has an acquisition cost greater than $5,000 and less than $250,000. Sub-minor personal property is an asset that has an acquisition cost of $5,000 or less. So those are your thresholds here. Right? Greater than $250,000, between $5,000 and $250,000, and less than $5,000. So the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, as we move on from logistics. Pretty simple concept, but a lot of details. And that's where I invite you again, as you're looking through that multiple times, to have that pen or pencil on hand, to circle things, to underline things, take notes on the in the margins, so that you don't have all the legal jargon. You know the wave tops, you know the concepts. Safe Medical Devices Act, 1990. So establish a mandatory requirement for treatment facilities to report all incidents that reasonably suggest there is a probability that a medical dental device has caused or contributed to the death, serious injury, or serious illness of a patient. Another act coming up there. Reporting unsatisfactory equipment. So there's three types that are on the slide here. Type 1, material is determined to be harmful or defective, right? To the extent that use may or has caused serious illness or death. It's a pretty extreme, right? Type 2, material other than equipment suspected of being harmful, deteriorated, or otherwise unsuitable for use. So it's deteriorated. Type 3, equipment determined to be unsatisfactory because of malfunction. Right? So it has caused, whether or not it works or not. Right? Because beyond the equipment, there's the person that's using it. Right? Type 2, right? Unsuitable for use due to deterioration, or it's suspected of being harmful. And then type 3, determined to be unsatisfactory because of malfunction. So this time it actually broke. It's no good for use. Three big differences between 1, 2, and 3. Report type 1 complaints immediately. Immediately. Type 2 and type 3 complaints are to be reported as soon as possible, but not later than 10 days from the date of the incident. Key there. Immediately, but not later than 10 days for type 2 and 3. But judging from the severity of what happened, right? So type 1, something happened. There was a sentinel event. Right? For type 2 and 3, you have a little bit of time, but you have to do it immediately. That's what gets tricky on some of these exams. Right? It's as soon as possible, but not more than 10 days. 3 maintenance levels. Level 1, performance testing. Level 1, preventive medicine is Level 1 preventive maintenance is the responsibility of the equipment operator, and consists of operator maintenance that is performed before, during, and after equipment usage. Level 1. That's the person using it, right, at the site. Level 2, preventive maintenance. Intermediate maintenance relates to scheduled, periodic, or planned technical inspections, lubrications requiring disassembly, replacements of worn or deteriorated parts, interior cleaning, calibration, verification, or adjustments and verification of level 1 performance. So we take a step back from the point of use. Level 1, point of use, the person using it. Level 2, we take a step back. Level 3 consists of maintenance requiring complete overhaul of the equipment item and is considered depot level maintenance or the equipment manufacturer service level maintenance. So when it comes to maintenance levels, level 1, again, closer to the patient. 2, take a step back, and 3, at the manufacturer level. 6700, the NAVMED 6700/4, medical dental maintenance work order. Right, the BMEDs will be pretty familiar with that. Report of survey, the DD Form 200. Again, more flashcard fodder. Authorized medical allowance list, the AMAL. The AMAL is the basic source document used to sustain supply block management, right? Remember, the AMAL is not a plastic box, right? Most of us, for some reason, early in our career, think it's a plastic box, not a list. AMAL ADOL, of course the D changes because it's dental, is the minimum amount of medical dental material to be maintained by an operational platform and on order at any given time. Know how those sentences flow so that you can read the appropriate answer and do well in the test. That's it. We've been moving pretty quickly. Please let me know if I'm going faster than appropriate. It is now 11:05. I'm going to offer you a break. We'll do 5 minutes. Stand up, get some blood flowing, and we'll continue on. Stretch.
Got finger stretches.
Read on the slide and read on the laptop.
There's that crazy thing, like everybody kind of got the teaching thing, you know. You usually know it immediately when somebody starts teaching.
I mean, I think with the hospital public manual, you're gonna have to, it's up to us to like read prescription.
And at this point, we should pretty much.
Yeah, like,
And it's like, hey, we see this on the test, last couple of tests, pointed out, write down. I mean, I know I've seen a bunch of those supply questions. Yeah, I've always, seen that. This is a great EAP course. I did one when I was here at the Zoom 4 or 5 years ago. The second class was in, and it was just, didn't have, this kind of app. It was just read verbatim by slide and like, this is one, this is a great computer program. Oh, yeah.
Super helpful.
There was a dude that just picked up first class off this last EAP course, and he swears by it. So he used this 25% or 95% study material was from his course. The other 5 was in blue check too. I don't think I'm gonna touch that thing ever again.
See, what was good is we got back then H1
Yeah.
He killed a lot of things. Him and Tucker together.
Don't use the FML thing on blue check too. I don't know if they love you.
No,
Yeah, he was good.
It's just use the knock out your biggest thing, and the biggest thing for us guys in Japan is like, just get the sections up.
Oh, yeah.
That's all you need to do. But, yeah. And now it's just
I was like the tour yesterday, but I didn't have to now.
Test is just another thing you gotta knock it out. Get that one done. You just gotta board it in practice.
Got me to their wall. Can you stop fucking playing with this thing? God.
All right, moving right along. Anatomy and physiology. A lot of terminology here. Pictures. And without a doubt, more than likely there's going to be pictures that are going to be on the exams with little lines pointing to, of course, structures of interest, and you're going to have to label them. So the difference between anatomy and physiology. So anatomy is the study of body structures and the relation of one part to another. And of course, physiology, the study of how it all works. Right? Various parts, how the various parts function individually and together. Descriptions. Now the way that I do this is I actually take a piece of paper and then I'll put some sort of graphic on there, and I'm going to write anterior on the front, and then on the back I won't have the guy's face, or and so on and so forth, right? And I'll write where those things are, how they relate, right? So they'll have a general thing to look at. So again, I can relate things together. Some of these, of course, are going to be relational, right? Distal, proximal. Something might be more distal than another. But if you put these in something that you can see, right? Writing anterior here, posterior here, internal, external, things of that nature. That can help you. Again, doing the same thing over and over again as far as repetition goes, that can help to an extent. But sometimes you got to mix it up, especially as it pertains to this section in the hospital foreman manual. There's a lot of graphic here. Medial, lateral, internal, external, right? These things, sure, you can remember what the words are, but it helps if you can relate it to something visual, especially when we get into words that we don't use a lot. Caudal, right? Lateral recumbent, right? Things of these nature, things of that nature. What I'll do when I'm doing lateral recumbent is I'll write it sideways on that piece of paper so that I'm forced to turn it so I can read it appropriately. All right, so all living things, animals and plants, or organisms that undergo chemical processes by which they sustain life and regenerate. Right? So sometimes you will see this verbiage in there. Right? Now, these are the functions necessary. We've got metabolism. We've got homeostasis. Again, it's not enough to sort of have this general idea in your head of what they are. Know the words to be able to point them out of a crowd. Chemical level, organelle level, cellular level. Obviously, it gets sort of bigger, so to speak, right? Things that happen at the chemical level, things that happen at the organelle level, they're more complex. The structures are more defined. At the cellular level, right? There's organelles within the cellular cells. Chemicals reactions happen in the organelles. And then, of course, we get into systems, most complex of the organizational units of the body, right? Level of organization involves varying numbers of different kinds of organs, arranged so that they can perform complex functions. And then, of course, systems reside within organisms. Right? There are organisms that reside in the organs. What are the organs for? As long as you know, again, what these things are, you should be fine, but know the words they use. The cell, right? Made up of a lot of different things, but very basically, we've got the plasma membrane, right, on the outside. The nucleus, the nucleoplasm, which resides inside the nucleus. Cytoplasm, right? Doesn't help just to know sort of generally where they are. It's a gel-like substance for cytoplasm, right? Reproduction within the nucleoplasm, so on and so forth. Different types of cells, simple or undifferentiated. Know the definitions of those words and you should be fine. The simplest living organisms consist of a single cell, able to carry on these, right? And then we've got multicellular, and then of course we move on to more complicated things over here. Don't be surprised to see something of this sort of complexity on the exam. What I like to do is I like to find these graphics that are not in my Foreman manual, or blow them up when I have them digitally so that I can see these things, right? And what I'll do is I'll try to memorize these things geographically. I'll know that the centrioles and the centrosome and the mitochondrion, right? I'll study these together. That way, if one of the questions happens to be about one of these, I'll know, well, it was in the bottom left quadrant, right? And I know the line goes this way. It's more than just studying what all of these things are specifically and having the right strategy to be able to know, understand, memorize, be able to recall what's on these graphics. Cellular shapes. Again, aside from squamous, it's fairly easy if you know what a cube is and what a column is, right? And then, of course, it gets more complicated as we move on. Epithelium, lining. The lining, epithelium, lining tissue of the body. There are three categories for epithelial tissue: columnar, squamous, and cuboidal, right? Like we saw before. And then, of course, tissues. Many layers said to be stratified. They're sort of fibrous. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's just a lot to them. There's classifications of the epithelial tissues, right? The shape and the arrangements help you figure that out. The color scheme of these drawings is based on a common staining technique used by histologists called hematoxylin and eosin staining, H&E. H&E staining usually gives the cytoplasm pink, and the chromatin inside the nucleus a purplish color. So if, again, if it boils down to it, knowing those colors can help you get through that. Cellular membranes, including the plasma membrane and nuclear membrane, do not generally pick up any stain and are thus transparent. Remember, when it comes to staining, that's not necessarily what they are in real life, but that's what happens when they're stained. More graphics here, all right? Cilia, hair-like processes. Squamous epithelial tissue, thin plate-like or scale-like cells. Cuboidal, there's that word cube, right? Cubical in shape, found in the more highly specialized organs of the body, such as the ovary and the kidneys. Take note of some of those examples, right? Sometimes you can, again, help correlate. Where are these? Well, they'll give you an example right there in the text. Connective tissue, areolar connective tissue, adipose connective tissue, skeletal muscle tissue, extracellular materials, osseous connective tissue. The reason why I'm going over the wave tops there is because once you know, of course, what skeletal means, this should be difficult. Osseous, right? Skeletal muscle, excuse me. Osseous, adipose, right? Adipose is fatty. Areolar. Know the definitions to help you get on the right track. Skeletal muscle. Note the striations. Striations. If you know what striations are, they can help you figure it out. Remember, more than knowing the text that's in the publications and the manuals, more than knowing the text, if you know what the words mean, you'll be better off in the long run. Cardiac muscle tissue, right? Dark bands called intercalcated discs. Sometimes that'll throw you for a loop. Read the whole thing. Come up with your key words. Use that pencil to circle what you need to circle. Characteristics of cardiac muscle. Neurons, pretty distinct shape, right? When we're looking at all these different bits and bobs and whatnot, the neuron is a distinct shape. It's nervous tissue. Photomicrograph showing multipolar neurons surrounded by small neuroglia in a smear of the spinal cord tissue. All of the large neurons in this photomicrograph show characteristics of soma, or cell bodies. Again, know what soma are. Dendrites, axon, nuclei of neuroglia. Nerve, that's the whole nerve cell body there. Know those 4 key things. Be able to spot them in a crowd. Epidermis can get fairly complex. These next couple of slides are going to go into there, right? You're going to need to see, you're going to need to, one, see the structures, know what they look like, and be able to see, know what they are and what they do in relation to each other. So epidermis, right? Tough, flat, scale-like epithelial cells. Dermis, true skin, lies below the epidermis, and gradually blends into the deeper tissues. And then the whole thing is the integumentary system. Listed from superficial to deep. We've got all of those terms right there, right? So I sort of make it a point to try and learn how to say these things because it helps me remember them. But of course, recognition is key, especially in that list right there, because that list shows from the top to the bottom. Dermis structures. We've got blood vessels. We've got nerve fibers, smooth muscles, right? As we go down. Now, as we move into terminology like appendages, when we think of appendages, we think of arms and legs, right? Well, within the skin, there's other structures that we need to know about, right? Nails, hair, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, strenuous glands. Not enough to know, again, these words. Know what they look like, where they are, and what they do. And then we get into some of the more complex diagrams that are going to be coming up in these next presentations. Epithelial, connective, muscular, nervous, all of these words, right? Epithelial, outer cover. That should be something automatic. Whenever you hear epithelial, outer cover. Connective, supports the framework. Muscular, movement, right? Nervous, of course, there's a lot of complexities in there, right? Brain, spinal cord, nerves. Skin is going to be the largest organ. There's going to be some absolutes here that may or may not present themselves on your test. So when it comes to largest organ or hardest part of the body, right, you should be able to relate to those quickly, right? Epidermis, outer, dermis, true skin. We've already gone over this. Compact bone, cancellous tissue, right? This, when we're talking about the skeleton system, 206. If you don't know that by now, tonight you should be able to go over that as much as you need to be able to memorize. 206 bones. Long and short. Of course, there's examples here. Flat, irregular, pretty self-explanatory. And there's divisions, right? Aside from what they look like, the descriptions that we went over, we've got the skull that has 28 of those bones. Vertebral, 24 movable or true vertebrae, right? And of course, there's a couple of names there. Thorax has 12. Appendicular consists of 2 parts. Upper extremities, and of course this list here. Lower extremities, pretty simple. We move into the circulatory, also called the vascular system, consisting of the blood, hard blood vessels. 2 types of blood cells. You should know this, especially the characteristics here, the numbers, the key words. Right? Carries oxygen. Right? Discharge carbon dioxide. 100 to 120 days. Each one of these is very, very important, and again is on the back side of one of my flashcards where it says red blood cells. Then we get into some of the specifics. Pericardium, pericardial fluid. If you know what peri means, this will help you out. But these are pretty distinctive terms, especially for those of us who in the, not necessarily the corner world, but specifically the sick call world or in the ward and whatnot. Membranous sac, right? Endocardium, serous membrane lining of the heart. Endo. Myocardium, heart muscle. There's different classifications for what moves the blood around. We've got arteries and arterioles. These are the distributors. Capillaries. These are the exchangers. Veins and venules. These are the collectors. Then we move into the immune system. 3 defenses. First, on top is the skin. Right? Tears help with that. Stomach acid, urine, sweat, mucus, saliva, all of these things. First line of defense. Know this list. Second, inflammation. Oh, pardon me, just one back. Inflammation of the infected area caused by macrophages or neutrophils. And of course, third, we've got antibodies, memory cells that help the body respond quicker to old infections. Know that there's those 3. The details behind them. Next slide. Rapidly transmits impulses from an area of the body to another. That's what the nervous system does. Then we have the endocrine system. Works at a far slower pace, but it maintains the body's metabolism at a fairly constant level. A lot of real specifics in there. That was very broad, but there's some specific key metrics, numbers, terms that you should know in there. Moving on to the respiratory system. The exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the atmosphere and the cells of the body. And the cells of the body, remember that. 2 phases of respiration. Physical and mechanical, and of course physiological respiration. So that was a really, really quick synopsis of A&P, but there's a lot more in there. There's a lot more in there. It would behoove you to study it in sections. Respiratory, circulatory, endocrine, nervous. Know those diagrams. Be able to point out what those things mean, because without a doubt, those diagrams are used over and over and over again. The next 2 are dental specific. Dental specific. And unless you're in that world, this can be very, very tricky to do. I purposefully set aside some time just to delve into this world. More than taking a look at a dental record so you can see where some of these forms go, what they look like. Spending some time to study these this subject matter will behoove you, because sometimes that little section, it fluctuates, as I'm sure most of you know. It can be light one year dental, and then it can be heavy. But once you get a good grasp on it, it's more review from test to test. Oral anatomy and physiology. Very, very graphic, heavy. Alright? So you're going to need to know about the growth period. You're going to need to know about how the development usually begins during this time. Again, numbers there. 5th or 6th week, 7th week. Epithelial skin cells thicken along the jaws. Right? And And then the total growth period is divided into the bud, cap, and bell stages. Bud, cap, and bell stages. So for the bud, as soon as the dental lamina is formed, patches of epithelial cells located there grow into underlying tissues to become tooth buds, right? It's the very beginning. You can see from the verbiage there how everything is developing. Fairly self-explanatory. 10 is a key metric right there. 10 tooth buds present in each arch that form, right? Tooth buds for permanent teeth form between the 17th week, right? 17th week of life through 5 years of age. Then we move on to cap stage, also known as proliferation. So that could be a curveball sometimes. So we said bud, and then we said cap, right? But more than cap, it's also known as proliferation. Then there's the bell stage, right? Think of the shape, right? Final stage, also known as histodifferentiation. If you know the words there, as far as, we use that prefix from time to time, histopathology and whatnot, and if you know what differentiation is, it'll help you key into what's going on. And if you can picture it in your mind, you can see how it goes, right? Ameloblast, excuse me, cells form the enamel, odontoblast cells form the dentin, cementoblasts form the cementum. Again, they correlate to each other, right? So don't just memorize one at a time. Those things should go together. Morphodifferentiation. Now we're going to see these these teeth sort of become what they need to be, right? With calcification. Calcification, of course, is the process by which organic tissue becomes hard. Eruption. Again, picture what that looks like in your head. Eruption is the movement of tooth into its proper position. Exfoliation. Shedding. Right? Those two things are very similar. They mean each other. The root of the primary tooth resorbs, it loses structure, and the permanent tooth erupts from the jaw. The premature loss of primary teeth can have a serious impact on eruption of permanent teeth and how they will be positioned in the dental arch. So two main parts, right? A crown and one or more roots. I always think it's interesting how they put it upside down, right? So that helps me remember it, because even though I think that you put the crown on your head, they have that down there. So crown is divided into the anatomical and clinical crown. Anatomical crown is the portion of the tooth encased in enamel, but that's not necessarily what you can see, right? The clinical crown is the part of the tooth visible. Know the difference there. The root is covered by cementum and embedded in a thin layer of compact bone that forms the tooth socket. This is called alveolar, the alveolar bone. The tooth may have one or more roots. Right? Two roots present are called bifurcated. Pretty simple, bi, tri, right? And then four or more, it's just multi-rooted. The tip of each root is called the apex. You know the definition of that? That's pretty simple. There's a small opening. Right, remember that. There's a small opening on each apex that allows passage of blood vessels and other nerves into the tooth. This opening is called the apical foramen. Enamel. Right? Calcified substance covers the entire anatomical crown. It protects the dentin. If you know that, you'll sort of be able to visualize how it works, where everything is. The color may vary due to its being translucent, of course, and it's the hardest tissue in the human body. Approximately 96% inorganic minerals, 1% organic, and water. Can endure crushing pressure of approximately 100,000 psi. Now, I've never seen that on one of my tests, but again, it's a key piece of trivia that you should know. Dentin. So we should know where that is, right, in relation to the enamel. It's a light yellow substance. Harder than bone, less dense than enamel, and it's very porous. Right? It's the largest portion, as it says here. Of course, 70% inorganic matter, 70% inorganic matter, 30% organic matter. So you can see that ratio tends to change as we get further and further in. Cementum, bone-like tissues that cover the roots. Right? Cementum joins the enamel at the cervix of the tooth, forming the CEJ. The primary function, of course, to anchor the teeth, and cementum is continuously formed throughout the life of the tooth to compensate for loss of tooth substance. Remember that. The pulp, soft tissue. The pulp chamber contains the dental pulp. So enamel, dentin, and then of course pulp chamber. The primary function is to form dentin and provide nourishment. which all where all the business happens. As you can see there, can you go back one please? So that is going to be key for you. As much as we went over all those slides, knowing where they are in relation to each other, so that when that graphic appears on your test, you're able to fill in the appropriate blanks. Alveolar process, the bony portion of the maxilla and mandible where the teeth are embedded and tooth roots are supported. Pretty simple graphic there, right? The socket is a cavity within the alveolar process in which the root of the tooth is held by periodontal ligaments. There are ligaments there. Now, as we were saying, the periodontal ligament, thin, fibrous ligament that connects the tooth to the bony socket. Normally, teeth do not connect the bone directly, right? Just like most places in the body. Tooth is suspended in its socket by the fibers of this ligament, and the fibers act as a shock absorber. Key pieces of trivia there. The oral cavity is covered by the oral mucosa. These are the parts. Masticatory mucosa, lining mucosa, specialized, right? For the tongue specifically. As you can see here, there's several bullet points here, and there's no easy way to get through these. Repetition, right? More than memorizing the names and the definitions and where they are, you gotta look at the diagrams. It's important. Gingiva covers the alveolar process. Firm and resilient, right? Characteristics here. Circles around the neck, protects the alveolar process. Healthy color ranges from pink to darker shades of purple. Of course, there are two types, unattached and attached. Know this. The two different types here, unattached gingiva, also known as free gingiva. Again, the possibility for a curveball here, right? Not directly bound to the tooth. Healthy mouth of this portion is approximately 1 millimeter to 3 millimeters wide. Key metric there. How big is it? Right? Gingival margin, 1 millimeter. So as much as the unattached gingiva is 1 millimeter to 3 millimeters, the gingival margin, 1 millimeter narrow band. Gingival, I'm not going to attempt to say that. Area between the unattached gingiva and the tooth. Popcorn hulls get trapped in this area. I like what they do there. It's a lot easier to know, to sort of visualize what that is by having that little example. Epithelial attachment, right? Attachment joins the gingiva to the tooth surface. Interdental papilla, the triangular space near the gingiva below the contacts of the teeth. Interdental, right? Helps prevent food from packing between the teeth. Attached gingiva, firmly fixed, attached, firmly fixed to underlying bone of the alveolar process. Dentition, right? Normally humans develop 20 deciduous primary teeth and 32 permanent teeth. Key numbers there. Dental arches, we've got the maxilla and the mandibular. We've got the dental quadrants, there are 4 of them. And of course it's just a combination of left and right and maxilla and mandibular. And each quadrant contains 3 anterior and 5 posterior. That's key there when it comes to some of the details that you'll be questioned on. Different types, right? Lots of different types. Incisors, cuspids, bicuspids, molars. You're going to need to know geographically where they are and the characteristics, as you can see there. Primary teeth are identified alphabetically. Again, if you're not in that community, that's difficult to sort of just come up with, right? But they're identified A through T, not necessarily by numbers, because that's how the permanent teeth are identified, 1 through 32. And that's how they are numbered. Pretty simple graphic, but as you can see there, can you go back one? Not only does the graphic show them numbered, but what they are. Very, very important thing to know. Surfaces. More than just us being able to say anterior, posterior, right? Medial, distal. There's a specific set of terms used to sort of name all the surfaces. The facial, right? Lips and cheeks. Mesial, closest to the midline. Distal, lingual, toward the tongue. Occlusal, right? Broad chewing surface. Proximal, 2 surfaces. Mesial, distal. The point where a mesial and distal surface touch is called the contact point. That's a great graphic right there to show you. That's the same, of course, too, and it shows you like the measles on the left there, and so on and so forth. It would be important. That's an important graphic to have memorized. Interproximal space. There are the space between two teeth. Interdental papilla occupies this part of the space. Occlusion happens live. The relationship between maxillary and mandibular teeth when they contact. When an abnormality occurs, it is called malocclusion. The occlusal surfaces of opposing teeth bear a definite relationship to each other. In normal jaw relations where teeth are of normal size and in the correct position, the mesiofacial cusp of the maxillary first molar occludes in the facial groove of the mandibular first molar. That is a mouthful, right? But if you take a look at all of the key words in there and go back to the graphics, it's easier to sort of envision what's going on. Right? That is the key for this. That is the key for this section. Being able to correlate all of that very technical jargon to what it actually looks like. The occlusal plane, two arches, curve of Spee and the curve of Wilson. Just something that you're going to have to memorize. Spee and Wilson, very, very specific to the dental realm. Angle classifications, 1, 2, and 3, normal. Then we've got deficient in chin length. And then we've got excessive in chin length. Right, overbite, underbite. Right? The next section has to do with actual diseases, actual issues in the dental world. And to my knowledge, I have yet to find any easy way to learn this other than page by page, section by section, looking it over, memorizing terms.
I think you gotta open that one, desktop, you gotta open it.
Me, the dental portions and the A&P portions and even the pharmacy portions are, it's like learning a new language. Sometimes, I don't know if any of you have served overseas, but, you'll learn certain phrases and you'll know that it's a greeting, but you won't necessarily know what the words mean. But when you drill it down, you learn exactly what the prefix and the root of the word mean. It helps you to understand. It helps you to be able to succeed when it comes to these advanced routines. But I have yet to find any substitution for old-fashioned repetition, studying on my own, coupled with studying in groups from time to time. All right, oral pathology. The science that treats the nature, causes, and development of oral diseases. Right? Salivary glands secrete 1,500 milliliters of saliva daily. Key metric there, or key number there. 750 million organisms per millimeter of saliva. 98.6, we should know that. And of course, the mouth is perfect for harboring bacteria. Pathology. A lot of key terminology in here. A lot of flashcard fodder here. Lesions. What are lesions? Wounds, sores, other tissue damage, resulting from disease or injury. Common lesions. Abscess. Know what that is. Cyst. Know what that is. Ulcer. Know what that is. Those are not specific to the dental realm. Elevated lesions. Vesicles, right? When we're talking about lesions, these are the ones that are elevated. Small elevations, containing fluid. Hematoma. Hema, right? If you know what hema is, this should help you figure it out. Localized collections of blood. Two most common non-elevated lesions. Petechiae. Round, pinpoint, non-raised purplish red spots. Ecchymoses. Large purplish red areas caused by blood under the skin. Caries, otherwise known as cavities, right? Caused by microbial process that starts on the surface of the teeth, leads to the breaking down of the enamel dentin, right? This process that destroys the tooth is called decay. So as far as the decay process goes, right? The first step in the decay process is decalcification of enamel. You should know that. Bacterial plaque adhering to smooth surfaces of the teeth. Of course, acid produced by bacteria in food trapped in fissures. These are the things that cause the first step. They appear as chalky white spots. Has been linked to streptococci and other acid-producing bacteria in the mouth. Different types of carious lesions, incipient lesions, surface area that hasn't progressed past decalcification. And you got arrested lesions, spreading in the enamel, but reaches a stopping point, and recurrent, right? Occurs beneath existing dental restorations. Improper cavity prep, inadequate cavity restoration, and old restorations. When you look at these, don't just look at what type they are. So these are types, right? Know what causes them. One more back, please. Lastly, of course, we have the smooth surface caries developed in the proximal surface or the interproximal surface of the teeth. So of all of those, right, those are the ones that are on the proximal and interproximal. As we move on, we get into the dental pulp. The pulp is a living tissue and comprised of vascular connective tissues. There's a lot can go wrong there when it's organic, right? When it's the outer surface, when it's that solid sort of that hard surface, it's either there or it's not, right? When it comes to decay, but there's a lot of things that can help it when we're dealing with more and more organic substances. Pulpalgia, pain in the dental pulp. Normally after restoration, sensitive to temperature, right? See, these are some signs and symptoms. Pain is described as what? Short, sharp, increases with laying down or walking upstairs. Pulpitis, right? Itis, you should be familiar with that suffix. Inflammation, right? Caused by bacterial infection or from dental caries. Microorganisms enter the pulp, they produce the damage, and they build pressure. The pain is dull, right? But it can lead to more severe pulsating pain. Chemical irritants and thermal changes during dental restoration can cause pulpitis. Periapical abscess. This should be something that you're well familiar with because it's an emergency, right? Inflamed pus-like abscess forms in the pulpal canal. If left untreated, it spreads through the apex and the root and into the bone. The bigger it gets, the more pressure it produces. Key things in here. Patients complain that the tooth feels high when biting and is very sensitive. Bone loss around the apex, right? Causes radiotranslucency. One of the things that we can see via X-ray. The course of the pus from the abscess goes from the apex into the jawbone and drains into the mouth, called a fistula. Another key term, right? This is one of the worst. That's why it should be one that you know. Just like the word entails, necrosis is the death of the tissue. Pulpal necrosis, right? Result of untreated pulpitis. Necrotic teeth must be treated, right? It's an emergency. Pulpitis. Periapical abscesses, things of that nature. Dead pulpal tissue produces toxins that smell foul. That'll be key there. You'll be looking for that in the questions and the answers. Dental pain may or may not occur from necrosis. Why? Because the nerves might be down. Then we start talking about pathology. Periodontal disease is the most prevalent chronic disease of humankind. So it's the most prevalent chronic disease. That's key. It refers to all diseases of the periodontium and can affect the surrounding teeth and tissues. And then, of course, here's a list of some of the symptoms. There's a bunch of them. Gingivitis, marginal gingivitis, right? So, of course, moving on from inflammation, the most common is the marginal. It's caused by poor hygiene and affects both gingival margins and papilla. Both are caused by food debris and plaque, calculus. The main characteristics are, of course, swelling, loss of stippling, on attached gingiva, redness. Again, long list of signs and symptoms there. Nug. I remember this was huge. Almost everybody knew about nug. Necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, referred to as trench mouth, Vincent's infections. redness, swelling, pain. Scab-like film, bluish gray. Keywords that are not going to be associated with just about anything. Yes?
I've seen nug, I've seen how do you treat nug.
Say again?
I've seen nug on the test, I've seen how do you treat nug.
There you go.
Hydrogen peroxide.
Hydrogen peroxide, lots of different examples like that, right? Where not only are you going to be addressed with what is this, how do you treat it, what are the symptoms, right? Where do they present? So you're going to need to know structure. More than the disease, you're going to need to know structure, treatment, sometimes medication. Odors, foul taste in the mouth, easy bleeding, right? Periodontitis, chronic inflammatory condition that involves the gingiva, crest of the alveolar bone, lots of structure, lots of anatomical references here, right? If you build the right foundation with the previous chapter, knowing what all of those are, generally speaking, it'll help you with these subjects. Bluish red gingiva and recession will progress as disease progressions. Periocoronitis, of course, inflammation of the gingiva around a partially erupted tooth, caused by inability to keep the area properly clean and can cause a gingival flap. Lots of keywords there. Diseases of the oral soft tissues, right? RAS, recurrent aphthous stomatitis. Canker sores, right? So know those specific terms as they pertain to canker sores. Painful ulcerations in the buccal mucosa, tongue, soft palate, floor of the mouth. Physical emotional stress can cause this, harsh foods, toothbrushing. Healing time is usually 7 to 10 days, another key metric there. Herpes simplex virus type 1, HSV1. Oral herpes, common sites, know these, right? What does it look like? Where is it? Causes for recurrence of HSV1 lesions are sunlight, menstruation, dental treatment, stress, and any dental treatment should be rescheduled when these are present. And of course, HIV, main cause of acquired deficiency syndrome, both threats to all dental health professionals and other healthcare workers that are exposed to bodily fluids, of course, instruments and whatnot. More about HIV infections. Candidiasis. I hope that's right. Fungal infection of the mouth, usually red or white. Hairy leukoplakia. These are some pretty serious pictures. I don't know if they have them. No, I don't think they're in the book, but if you've ever seen these are pretty serious. That's a viral infection on the tongue. White and raised lesions. Kaposi sarcoma, cancerous. Right? Dark bluish purple lesions. Involve the blood vessels. Lots of different oral cancers. Right? Most often in the tongue, floor of the mouth, lower lip. They're benign tumors, they're malignant tumors, not always life-threatening. Carcinomas, adenocarcinomas, sarcomas, right? Smokeless chewing tobacco or snuff plays a role in these precancerous lesions. Smooth or scaly white patch called leukoplakia or snuff liquor keratosis. Irritation occurs because of the 90% nicotine of smokeless tobacco directly absorbed into the oral mucosa and bloodstream. Smoking cessation classes are available. I've never seen anything specifically on that, but that's a good bit of trivia to know. Congenital disorders, right? So these are the things that are from the get-go. You're going to have to deal with these. At birth, odontia, absence of single or multiple teeth. We learned that obviously teeth are developed way early. I think it was the 4th or 5th week is what it said there. And there are ways to see whether or not they have been developed. Supernumerary teeth, development of one or more extra teeth. Cleft lip, cleft palate. Right? I will never forget this because I can't say it, and it literally is, results from short lingual frenulum attachment. Disorders affecting the teeth. So impaction, just like it sounds. Teeth are blocked by physical barriers such as a teeth or bone, right? Cause tooth eruptions that are going to be sort of abnormal. Early loss of deciduous teeth, loss of jaw space, attrition, wearing away, abrasion, right? Lots of these things. Pretty self-explanatory. In abrasion, one or more teeth may show wear, obviously. caused by improper toothbrushing, biting foreign objects, or mechanical actions like poorly fitted dentures. Erosion, just like it sounds, loss of tooth substances from a chemical process that doesn't involve bacteria on the facial surface of the gingival third of the crown, often involving the maxillary incisors. Early stages are sensitive to temperature, acidic foods, and toothbrushing. So you'll see this recurring through that section. What it is, how it manifests itself, what you'll see, what the complaints sound like, and so on and so forth. Quite a bit covered there. Does anyone have any questions for me? I'm saying.
Lunch. 1300. Start with chapter 9. 1300.